biggest fears that people have is that you might not collect rent. What happens if people stop paying their rent? What happens if the government shuts down for a long enough period of time for Section 8 not to pay? What if you have military tenants and the government shutdown impacts their ability to pay because they don't get paid for a couple of months? But what we have going on right now, coming up in the next couple of months, could be a rent apocalypse for some people. If you're familiar with Matt the Lumberjack Landlord's content, you know that he's been talking about the rent relief program that came out from the CARES Act of several $billion being set aside to help tenants pay rent during COVID or during the pandemic. But this is emergency rent relief. So I have some diversification strategies that I use to protect my portfolio so that I am ready for something like an apocalypse, literally planning on a government shutdown, a pandemic, or a stock market crash so that I can't be too impacted by this. The first way of diversification, words are hard, is keeping my properties more than 10 miles apart. So I prefer to have small multifamily units or single family, if they would cash flow, that are at least 10 miles apart. Instead of one 10-unit apartment complex, 5 duplexes spread out. That way I'm not pulling all of my tenants from the same source. And the second way that I like to diversify is I have about 1/3 through the Section 8 program, 1/3 that are military, and 1/3 that are working or retired. So that if one of those apocalyptic things happens, 1/3 of my portfolio can be impacted, which means I wouldn't be sunk. But in the last couple of years, there's been some very tempting offers from the government. Here is emergency rent relief. I have an area where Section 8 told me the most they would pay for my rental was $1,800. I used the binder strategy, got them to agree to $2,200. They were offering 20% higher if I would accept an emergency rent relief client, somebody who qualified for the program. And this means that they're in a situation where COVID impacted them, and then these emergency funds can be used to pay for their rent for a period of time. So in November or December, and like the beginning of November, so less than a week for some people-ish, it's stopping. The emergency rent relief program is stopping. So there's been some emails going out to some of the landlords, some of the tenants saying, as of this date, we no longer have funds, we're not accepting new applicants, and there's not much warning. So if somebody's in the Section 8 program, which is not for low income people, it is for fixed income people. If they were told in 6 months, because this is what happens when I have a Section 8 tenant who has 4 kids, one of the kids turns 18, moves out, they get told, hey, we're no longer going to qualify you for the same amount. Your rent's going to go up by X dollars. They have several months to plan for it. We have communication back and forth on how we're going to handle this. And so far, it's never been an issue. But when you've been living for 4 to 18 months, rent free, literally getting everything covered for your housing expense, you think, because people watch this content are investors, we know that this is money that we would use to increase our savings rate towards investing. We would not use this money to take vacations, to buy the nicer car, to create expenses like buying the car that we couldn't handle if we then also had to pay our rent, because when the program ends, and it will, people are probably going to end up going through evictions. So here's my warning with the rent apocalypse. Because someday we're going to have an apocalypse we're not ready for, but not today. But we are ready for apocalypses like this. This is planned obsolescence. We know this program isn't going to last forever. So there are people like Michael Zuber, and from One Rental at a Time, Matt the Lumberjack Landlord, who have over 100 units. For them to take advantage of this program, to help people out, to provide housing using the emergency rent relief, to actually make a little bit extra money with a planned tenant turnover at the end of the program, it makes sense. Totally great for them. I only have 16 units. I could probably have done 1 or 2 properties through this program and survived the cost of a turnover at the end of it, possibly an eviction and a turnover. But why take that risk when the portfolio is not that big? So when we know rents could go down, they have gone down in some markets, right? They've never gone down market wide since we've started tracking the data, but in some markets, they can go down. So we invest. I invest like I'm planning for a 50% rent reduction, and I wouldn't have to go back to work. Rents could go down 50%, even though I've never seen a reduction in my area, and they're continuing to go up. I've planned for that. If you're going to use a program like this, make sure it is a percentage of your portfolio that you can handle not getting the payment from and not be severely negatively impacted. I'm not saying not getting all your money is fun, to quote Cody Davis, but if you plan for it, then it's worth the risk. I would avoid a program like this, especially if you had, like me, I have a small portfolio, 7 properties, 16 units, cash flow. I was saying it's about $14,000 a month, but the binder strategy this year has kind of fixed that. It's a bit more. It's a great strategy. I should like write it down or tell some people about it. That'd be cool. Don't take advantage of this program unless you can handle when it goes away, and not just, oh, you're not going to get the 3 or 4, the 20% extra above what Section 8 was paying, but can you handle 2 or 3 months with no rent and the cost of an eviction as a planned event in 6 months to 18 months? So you're going to hear a lot of people talking about this program in a way, and landlords are effed. I could say that. Yeah, they're effed. Some who built their entire portfolio have a large set of their tenants coming from this program. Yes. If they're not ready for it, they are effed. If you watch this content and you listen to people like the Lumberjack Landlord and Zuber and Millennial Mike, who talks about he has his 10 units, he could have handled 2 or 3 in this program, but would he have wanted to? So even with my 16 units and 7 properties, I didn't take a penny from this program. And I suggest, unless you have a huge portfolio and can handle it, that you don't take advantage of it either. Please don't leave. I've been making a video to run a short video. So I'm going to give an exit, but that means don't leave. I hope this video is at least, and I'll edit that out later. I hope this video has at least made you think. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk. Don't leave. Don't go nowhere. Okay. Howdy. How's everybody doing? I hope your evening's going well. This is going to be a live stream where I don't have any other commitments tonight, so it can go on as long as the questions do. For those people who like the shorter content, I'm sorry. Those videos come out during the week. This is going to be one of the longer ones for the people who like a more podcast version where you can listen in the background while you're doing other things. And if you show up late, just set it to like 1.5 times and make me sound like a chipmunk and you'll catch up. When I get to the howdies, the first thing I'm going to do, howdy Beach Builder, I see you just got here. Tom Kine, howdy, I thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. We were talking about audiobooks the other day. Let me know if you like the one that I suggested. I think I suggested, because you had talked about, you've already gone through the One Rental at a Time. Hopefully you were listening to the 15 Conversations with Real Estate Millionaires, but a lot of people really liked Set for Life by Scott Trench. I liked that for mindset, and it has some actionable stuff in it, so it's not as mindset-y as Rich Dad Poor Dad, but I really liked Scott Trench's and Mindy Jensen's second book. And I forget the title because it's long, but it's something about the first-time homebuyer by Scott Trench and Mindy Jensen. That one covered a lot of different aspects of what we try to share with real estate and gave good detail. So it's one I suggest. Lauren, howdy. Thank you for being first in rainy Tacoma. Yes, we're finally done with summer. I'm glad it landed on a weekend this year. Fat Sal, the stream is not in an hour. It is now. Howdy, Vatsal. Howdy, Surf Marco. Lizette, howdy. Cheers. Get start early with the cheers. Everybody, cheers to whatever you're sponsoring the video with. Zero, zero, zero. Howdy. This is important stuff. Thanks for covering it. Thank you. The rent stuff is really important because it's almost the first thing that comes up. The first thing that comes up usually is, what if a tenant trashes my property, or what if I can't find a tenant? Like, those are the 2 big concerns that newer investors usually bring up before they've really done any kind of research. But what if tenants stop paying is a concern of pretty much all investors across the board, especially when programs are ending. Tom, howdy. Brian, howdy. Thanks for all the time you spend educating us. Thank you for hanging out. I hope it's beneficial. I can't put into words how important I think it is that more people get to the point where work is optional. Sit back for a second and think. What would change in your life if you won the lottery? You win $10 million. Most people watching investing content would say, well, I would invest it. I would figure out how to invest it. I would learn how to make it earn me money, right? Like, it's like that's the thing that we would do because we're trying to earn money to invest. So if we got money from a lottery, we would try to invest. But beyond that, your money is invested. It's working for you. You have financial freedom. Work is optional. What do you do tomorrow? Do you care that tomorrow's a Wednesday or a Friday or a Sunday? The freedom, the like literal escape, they call it a rat race, but I think it's escaping the normalcy that life expect. We expect to work 40 years, 40 hours a week to retire on 40% of what we made. And people are okay with that. When I first started investing, I thought, okay, financial freedom. I could do it in about 10 years if I got a rental every 2 years, and then it sped up because I wasn't planning on the income snowball. But these last few months, I retired in July. It is a completely different world. It's almost hard to talk to my friends and family and not talk about how amazing financial freedom is because they're still working. Because they don't do what I did. They don't, well, my brother did. He'll talk to me about it. So yes, I have an outlet outside of YouTube. But I want to share this with you so you can get to the same point. And it doesn't mean you have to quit working. I quit working because I'm super lazy. People don't believe me when I say that, but that was the motivation to get here. You could then go and do something you just enjoy. What skill do you have? Is it music? Is it athletics? Is it something that you can go and coach or teach and not worry about the money? Financial firefighter, howdy. Have you ever thought about using lease guarantee insurance? I've thought about it. I've dismissed it. So my problem with almost all forms of insurance is they are scorched earth. I would not want to use them unless it was a major event. Really quick backstory. I have a couple of questions I'm going to go through that are from Lumberjack's channel too. I have not forgot about them. I'll ask them here in a second. But in 2006, I had a neighbor's tree hit my house. This is before I was an investor. And right after I had refinanced to an adjustable rate mortgage to pull out equity to give my spouse her portion of the equity. Great times. But anyways, 2006, tree hits my house, takes out windows. I replaced a sliding glass door with French doors, so I spent a little more money repairing it than I needed to, but that was my expense. But the window replacement was done by insurance, something like $1,300. My homeowner's insurance almost tripled. And for 5 years, I couldn't get insurance through anybody else. So I was stuck with that. And they probably could have dumped me, and then I might have just not had insurance and had to go with what the mortgage company would have called lender-placed insurance, which is astronomically expensive in my experience. So what I do now is I have insurance on everything. I wouldn't insure rent because of the diversification. If you were 100% Section 8 or 100% military, because you're in the middle of nowhere by a base, and that's the only type of people that you will rent is military, maybe add the insurance. But if you can diversify the locations and the tenant base, that's my insurance. I wouldn't take an insurance claim on rental income because it puts a claim on your record. And when you have several properties, all of your insurance rates can change. So I literally have 5,000 or 10,000 deductibles on my policies, depending on what was available the year that I put it on there and what I've been able to negotiate since then, because I'm only going to do like a total burn down or if somebody fell and broke their neck. That's when I would use insurance. So I've considered it, but I haven't put it on there. And I see Derek. Howdy. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. Have learned a ton from your channel, closing on a single family home tomorrow and plan to use your binder strategy on the inherited tenants. That is awesome. Congratulations. One suggestion, if you're familiar with my content, you probably already know this, but I'm going to say it for anybody sitting in the back that hasn't heard. You close tomorrow. You didn't get to vet these inherited tenants. So you don't right off the bat know their credit score. You don't know their work history. You don't know their ability to pay or their intent to pay on time for about 2 months. So whenever I've purchased properties that had people living in there, I don't use the binder strategy right away. I'll wait 2 months and then go, if I want to keep them based on three things. Do they pay their rent on time? It's kind of like the third biggest question that investors ask us is, what if somebody stops paying their rent? So do they pay on time? Second thing is, do I get noise complaints? Sort of like my other tenants not like them. And third thing is, do they call me with super trivial things? Like if I go through those things, and so far I'm tracking 100%. I haven't found a tenant that I didn't want to keep. There was one that was calling me for trivial things, but I had a little short Dion talk and educated them on my 3 words that you can use to call me. Everything else should be texted or emails. And here's the things that a tenant needs to take care of. Not that I have tenants do repairs, but some things are ridiculously simple that a tenant can do themselves. Like if a light bulb doesn't require a ladder, the owner isn't the one out there changing it. So if you close tomorrow, November, December, in January, beginning of January, I would probably use the binder strategy, even though your local laws for a rent increase in Washington state, it's the laws are weird. You can give 20-day notice if you intend to not renew somebody's lease. You have to give 90 days if you intend to move in or rehab to give them a chance to move. But you have to give 60 days notice for a rent increase above 10%. So and then it's even more interesting if you're in Seattle. And then King County, and then the rest of the not insane state. But the rest of us have to give 60-day notice. So I have the binder talk in January. And then I give 90 days before it's actually going to go into effect. I tell the tenants, so we have the binder conversation. They choose the new rent. And if it's what I agree to, we say, okay, cool, that's the new rent. So they've already agreed to it. Give them a few seconds for that to settle in. And they're thinking, you're talking in January, so they're thinking February 1st, rent's going to change. And then you go, and you don't say it like this. You don't say, I get to be a good guy, but you get to be a good person, and go, so February is going to stay the same. I want to give you time to adjust to this new change in your budget, get you a chance to mentally prepare. And March, going to stay the same. But April 1st, we'll have this in the lease that we're going to sign. So these 3 months, these 2 or 3 months or whatever, stay the same. April 1st, we'll write in the new amount. So yes, it does delay your rent some, but it keeps you legal with the law, and it gives your tenant the idea that you agreed to a new rent amount, and then you delayed it, seemingly costing yourself a couple of months of that extra money. Because part of the binder has a couple purposes. One, you want to get the rents that make sense, but 2, you want happy tenants. Happy tenants don't trash your property. Happy tenants don't move, and so it's very effective that way. But congratulations. And then my chat, where did we go? 000. Thank you for this. I appreciate it. Can you cover what percentage you consider to be an acceptable for cash flow in this environment, and perhaps your minimum cash on cash return? Yes. So let me make sure I understand the question. The percentage you consider acceptable on cash flow. Okay, so my minimum cash flow, I like what I hear on BiggerPockets all the time, is I wouldn't do a deal if it made less than $100 a door, but that's not the goal, because that doesn't tell you anything. That's my minimum. Because what if you did a 0 down VA loan? $100 a door sounds like it's a lot of money, right? But what if your out of pocket cost to acquire was $300,000? Now it doesn't sound so great. So I do have a minimum, and I've never even come close to it because in my area it's fairly expensive. So if you're investing like Millennial Mike does, where he invests in Gary, Indiana, it's probably possible to find deals that would get you a good 10 or 20% return on your money, but only make $50 a month, right? It's not worth pursuing at that rate. He's getting like $250 a unit there, so worth pursuing. And then look at the yield. Yield is market specific. What's going on in your local area? There's over 300 markets. I've heard quotes from 300 to 500, somewhere in there. Not only what your yield is, but in my area, I was able to find 6 to 8% cash on cash returns. And it was kind of a weird breakdown. Out of 100 deals, 80 would lose money, because it's people with wish pricing that's going to sell to homeowners who are buying based on payment, not on yield. Or people looking to park money because they don't want their currency to drop, and so they're protecting it by putting it in properties in the US. So there are about 80% of the deals that go just suck. 20% would make money. Out of those 20% that made sense, and I was looking at, the average was 6 to 8%. So I was looking for 10s. It got a little bit harder in the last year, so I was looking at lowering it a little bit as I watched my yield go lower in the area. Some areas it went up, but the idea is to take this out of the one rental at a time strategy, like right out of the book. Take 2 or 3 months to figure out what the average is in your area. Find those 80% that suck, get rid of them, find the 20 that would make sense. Out of those, what is the average yield? And then try to beat it. So Matt, the lumberjack landlord in his area, was getting 20 to 30% returns because he was finding 15 to 20s and then going for the best deals. That has adjusted as the market changes. But then also you want to know which asset are you going for. Single family homes don't cash flow in my area. So unless you are doing short-term rentals or renting by the room, I wouldn't suggest buying single family home. There are areas like Gary, Indiana with Millennial Mike. He's got a bunch of single family homes that are cash flowing and getting a good return. So it's true. Real estate is local. Figure out what the averages are in your area for the cash on cash return, and then try to beat it. And it doesn't have to beat it by a lot. Don't get stuck in one of the biggest mistakes that investors make of thinking you have to have every deal as a home run, right? Base hits win the game. You're not going to get RBIs without people on base. You're not going to find deals that are home runs often enough to actually reach financial freedom. If I waited for something like the 1% rule, I wouldn't own one property. Not one of my deals has hit the 1% rule, but all of them have gotten a 10% or better cash on cash return, which was what I was shooting for in my market. Your market might be a little different. Again, thank you for that, and thank you for the question. And Surf Marco, question below. Appreciate the question. I'm on a large lot. Zoning allows for 3 to 5 units, no HOA. I can't refinance. Is there a loan for mobile manufacturing homes only so I can put another house on my lot for income? Bend, Oregon. Okay, and it went in twice, so it's the same one. I'm making sure I'm not missing anything else in the question there. So great question. This is how I would handle it if that's what I was going to do, because the first answer is going to be, I don't know. But if I did want to know, and that was my plan, to put mobile homes on my lot, first, find out if your municipality is going to let you. Cities don't like manufactured homes because it is not an upgrade to the property, so it doesn't get taxed the same as a stick-built house. Some municipalities might be resistant to it, some aren't. I would find manufacturing companies that make the manufactured homes and ask them where to go for lending. They're going to know. They sell the product. Same thing if you're buying an RV. They're going to know who's going to do the lending. Go to buy a motorcycle. They've got a finance team. Find the mobile home things, get their offers in writing, and then talk to all the different lenders to see if anybody offers a product that would beat it. So while I haven't done that and I don't know, that's the logic process that I would follow to get to figuring out if that was the route to go. If you're looking at mobile homes, I would also look at RV pads. Sometimes that's simpler and easier to put in place, and then you rent out the space without having to put the mobile on yourself, and can make just as much profit because you don't have the payment on the building as much as you're going to get the profit from the space rental. But know your area. Here in Washington, there's a wait list to get in anywhere that has RV pads, and some areas it might not be that way. Just something to consider. And also, if you're going to be doing that, look at your city might be more apt to agree to it if you're going to have to tie into city water and sewer, because they make money that way. Like they would from taxing its structure. But if you're going to be doing septic, they don't care because they don't make any money that way. Seems like a good strategy. I would also recommend looking at the YouTube channel, That ADU Guy, and seeing if that might make more sense too, having a tiny home built. Depending on your area, they can be pretty popular. Might not cost as much as doing a whole stick-built build. But doing an ADU, not quite like tiny home, but he breaks it down much more eloquently than I'm going to. I would think if I'm going to build an ADU, I'm going to find out what's the largest square footage I can do and do that because I'm going to get the most rents. It's not the best deal. Sometimes you're going to get a better return by putting in a 1-bedroom versus a 3-bedroom because the cost to build it versus the rent you're going to get, the yield is better on the 1-bedroom in some cases. But like I said, check out his content. He's much better at putting it into words than I just did because it's literally his niche. So make sure I'm not missing any there. I'll go back up here to my questions. So let me answer these questions from Sean and Wendy, who were in Lumberjack Landlord's live stream on Sunday. I told them I would answer this question here. They asked, they pretty much know my story. They've heard my BiggerPockets episode. They watched my very first video, which is, financial freedom in 10 years or less. Basically, it's like the first video on my channel. But what happened from 2008 when I got laid off from the police department? How long was it till I started investing? It was a couple of years, right after leaving the police department. So I had tried for a pension in the Marines, tried for a pension in law enforcement. So 6 years and 8 years, neither one of those worked out. Got laid off from the police department in 2008. Immediately got a job with a truck driving company called Oak Harbor Freight Lines, who is union and has a pension. So third option for a pension. They went on strike. So that job went away too. I started working at the CDL school, not making a lot of money. And in 2009, 2010, I started having the thought. First, I was trying to give my house away. My single family house that I lived in, I was underwater. I owed more money than it was worth, and I couldn't find somebody to take it. I almost got it to go through on one deal, one subject too, but they in the end couldn't qualify. So because the lender looked at them, literally said, make 12 monthly payments and then you can have the house. They get to like 10 months and lost one of their jobs. And then they backed out and inherited a house anyway and ended up moving out. So good job, good deal for them. But around 2010, so almost 2 years of trying to figure out how to get rid of a house, I moved into an apartment and rented out the house because my debt to income was so bad. 2 years in the apartment, so end of 2012, 13 to buy the first duplex, 14, 15 to buy the second one, 16 in the middle of 16 to buy the third one. So it was a long time. I've said this on my channel several times. The first 5 years feel like everything takes forever. I just went to lunch the other day with REI Stoners, and we were talking about, the name I hear on YouTube. It's not what I called you the other day when we were there, but those first 5 years, and you have the struggle of maybe you don't know which strategy you want to go with. So you get shiny object syndrome where you're looking at everything, and it feels like you're not making a lot of progress. So that part's hard. Which brings me back to what I was saying earlier. I really wish I could share this information with more people because I wouldn't have thought the type of life I can have now was possible if I looked at my life 10 years ago. And then I was lost here in my chat. Okay. Cody, howdy. I'm seeing a couple of people on here that have the badge for being members, and I'm sorry that YouTube is kind of glitchy and the join button isn't showing up for some people, but there are going to be members only live streams on Fridays. And that seems to be the date from a few emails that I got from people that are members saying this is the best time. They asked not to do a weekend. I thought weekend would be great, especially with Zuber not doing Saturdays anymore. It would have been a perfect time to slide into that slot. But I get some people either work the weekends or they want to go do other stuff on the weekend. So members only live streams will be Fridays. I just have to figure out if it's going to be midday or evening. Help me out on that. Tom, how important is a personal financial statement for you or a lender for your 10 or plus or minus 10 loans? So before you get to 10, I didn't know what a personal financial statement was. A few months ago, I was looking at a 50-40-10 deal where I would use a DSCR loan, so asset-based, and I actually had to make a personal financial statement. I had never done it. I reached out to the lumberjack landlord and I was like, hey, teach me how to adult. How do you do this? So when you're doing, that's a loud car. When you're doing conventional loans in your own name, I've never had a bank or lender ask me for a personal financial statement. It is check your credit score, check your income, check your consistency of your income, check your rental income history. So after you have 2 years, it gets a lot easier. But going for that commercial loan or DSCR or asset-based or any of those loans where they don't so much look at you, they're going to look at the performance of the property. They are going to look at two things that are yours. First is your credit score. That still matters. They still cared about that. And the second thing is they want a personal financial statement. And the really cool thing is there's no set way. It's not like you just Google personal financial statement. Here's the template, you fill it out. I literally have a spreadsheet where I put in, here's my properties. Here's what I paid. Here's the current value. Here's the mortgage payments. Here's the rents. Listed everything out. And then on the spreadsheet, there's also a thing at the bottom that says current values of properties, either based off of appraisals that I've recently had or getting kind of an average of the Redfin Zillow estimates, because these are loose numbers that don't have to be too accurate. When you go through it to do a refinance on a property, they're not going to take that. They're going to go for an appraisal to say, here's what is the debt that's owed, and here's how much they're worth. So you do the subtraction, it tells you what the net worth is. For most of those types of loans, they're going to want to make sure that your net worth, which is your total gross value minus all debt. So every mortgage, and sometimes they'll look at the cost of selling. So they'll add another 6 to 8%, depending on what they think the cost of selling would be, to get you to what your net worth is. And that net worth number needs to be, for some of them, at least 50% of how much you're trying to borrow. So if you're trying to borrow $1 million on a DSCR loan, they're going to want you to have a net worth of $500,000. That doesn't mean you have $500,000 in the bank. It means that if you sold everything, you'd have more than $500,000 left. So once you get to 10 mortgages in your name, and if you're married and you do mortgages in each of your names, you can have 20. Seems like a lot of work to do to get there. Probably worth it. Then you need to go usually with DSCR, commercial asset-based, where your personal financial statement is going to be everything. And like the lumberjack landlord talks about, the relationship you build with the lenders becomes a lot more important. And I haven't really, maybe we should do this as a three amigo. How important is your relationship with your lenders? Because I know Matt and Mike, if I put words in their mouth, would think very important. You are building relationships that go over decades and blah, blah, blah. One rental at a time, Michael Zuber had a lender reach out and say, will you take this property? Like, we want somebody that connects, because they're losing it. Will you take it? I think he got like a 10 unit for free or something. It was a great story to ask him about. Whenever he figures out when his live streams are going to be, I think I'll do that. But I don't have a relationship with my lenders. I have a couple lenders that I refer people to, and they do great work. But every time I've gotten a loan, because I'm under 10 in my own name, I do this like I would with any vendor. If I was going to get a roof done, a deck built, windows replaced, I'm going to get at least 3 contractors to see each other's quotes and see who's willing to beat the competition. So I do that with lenders, get their offer in writing, and I tell them, hey, like, it's great working with you. I hope you get to keep the business. Be ethical. So take their offer in writing and say, I'm going to share this with their lenders. You show the other lenders, then you show the first lender what they countered with to give them a chance to keep your business. So as long as you're ethical and you're upfront, you might run into a lender that says, I'm not comfortable with that. If I'm going to spend the time giving you any time of my time, you have to work with me. You find a different lender. Great question. Thank you, Tom. Chester, howdy. And then Beach Builders just got here. Chris Miller just joined. What program were you talking about? So, Chris, there was an emergency housing voucher program. So it kind of sounds like Section 8 because it's a voucher program, but it was an emergency. So something related to the CARES Act, where in your area, so in my area, they were paying 20% more than what Section 8 would pay. So if you had a $2,000 Section 8 limit on your property, they had to pay $2,400 a month. Sounds great. Sounds like you would jump it. You get $400 a month extra, right? But when the program ends, more than likely you're dealing with a tenant turnover. You're possibly dealing with an eviction, which is the experience that the lumberjack landlord is having now. So that was the rent apocalypse that's kind of happening. So my suggestion was, if you have a huge portfolio, dozens and dozens of properties or units, and you did a small percentage, 2 or 3 units, not 2 or 3%, but 2 or 3 units, which is what the lumberjack landlord did, I think you'll be fine. You could probably handle the turnover. You could probably do it. They might become a tenant after the program ends. I doubt it, but it's possible. I have 16 units and I didn't take any of that with me. I knew that it would turn into a tenant turnover, and I knew that it would probably turn into an eviction. So no thanks. Howdy, Ninja Vanish. Matt, howdy. Chester, going to be in listen only mode for about while I take out the trash. Nice. RA Stoners, howdy, good evening. From Josh and Mary tonight. Nice. Howdy, Austin. Jack, howdy. Chris Miller, thank you for all the content. You, Zuber, and Mike and Matt really have helped me step my game up and make deliberate, who would call me during the live stream. I should have answered that and just let it, not told them they were on speaker and see where that phone call would have went. I need to step up my game and make deliberate choices. 6 units now, and really only need 1 more good property to hit financial independence. Awesome. Perfect. And you add a little bit of time to your equation, and it only gets better. You guys are camping everywhere. Awesome. RAS owners. It's a great place to camp, especially if you don't mind being a little bit wet, especially this time of year. To and Fro Global. Howdy. And Leah, would you consider doing a video on the process of becoming an Amazon narrator as a side hustle? It could definitely speed up getting capital to invest in multi-units. Yes, I could do a video on that. I think it'll confuse some people because this is mostly a real estate and financial freedom thing, but it is a side hustle thing. So I'll do a caveat at the beginning of that. Let me take a picture of that. It was a lot more difficult than I thought it would have been. I figured hit record, read a book, edit out the times where I say or do something stupid, which is often. But the requirements on the audio and the how do you find a quiet place? People, you don't realize how much noise there is in your place until you have headphones on and you listen to yourself recording so you can hear noise in the background. And your building makes noise, the trees make noise, birds, cars. Like, it's hard to find an actual close to soundproof studio to do a recording. But absolutely, I will consider that. Thank you. Lizette, howdy. I'm in the 3rd chapter and 1 rental at a time, doing the work. When running your numbers on a property is listed on the MLS, do you use current rents or where rent should be to find the yield? Thank you. Great question. And it's probably one I need to do a standalone video on for the same, because not too many people are going to watch the 2-hour video. I don't get a lot of views on that, right? You know, like the people that show up live, it's great because you don't have to listen to commercials. I like that too. So here, let me top of mind, put it into words, how I would put it in that video. Should probably hit record and just do it. I don't think I'm good enough to do that off the top of my head though, without editing. I edit everything when I can. How do you know where rents should be? That would be the starter question. I never use the rents that are on the MLS or what are on the current leases, and I never use the made up prospectus or whatever they call it, pro forma rents that they list. That's them making up numbers. And even the numbers in the lease that they're currently paying might not be the rents. Find out what area average rent is, and I'll talk about that in a second. But I have the experience where I was doing the inspection on the one property I've backed out of. And during the conversation, the tenant said, yes, this is my rent, but it's only this high because it includes the deposit. We didn't do a deposit, which was not in the lease. This is just the rent, right? He says, we didn't do a deposit because I didn't have it. So we did higher rent so that throughout the year, the deposit would be taken. So next year, the rent's coming. None of that was talked about or pointed out or anything. Their rent was above area average. It's kind of why I brought up the conversation. So what's really important to me is find out what area average rents are. Video on my channel is how to set rents in a hot market. So I would watch that to bring you up to speed on how to get the rents for your area. Then I go 5 to 10% below. I used to go 10% below, but demand is so high recently. I've been just doing 5% to run the numbers so that you have padding. You're not using the numbers that they give you. You are going off of what you expect the rents to actually be after you use the binder strategy, a little bit below area average rents. And here's what I do, because this dirty pool, sometimes the owners really like the tenants. So they put it up for sale, you get under contract, and then the owner signs a 1-year lease with the tenant at a rent you wouldn't accept. But when you're buying a property, it doesn't matter who owns it. Leases between the tenant and the property. So you are stuck with that new rent for the length of that lease. That's actually happened to me. So what you do is you take, so if they sign an agreement at $1,100 and you want the rents to be $1,400 for that year, that means you're losing $300 a month to what you would have expected that you would have got. So $3,600 that you're going to lose in a year. If you add $3,600 to your cost to acquire mentally, it's going to cost me $3,600 more to buy this property. Is the yield still worth pursuing? If it is, continue to close. If it isn't, and you're still under your inspection time, then you find a reason to back out of the deal and get your earnest money back and move on. You don't have to take the loss because you don't have to close on the deal. You can use the new lease as the reason you back out too. In my case, it was still a good enough return, even with that. And then I ended up not ever changing that rent because they were, it's a dark story. I don't know if I should share it. Okay, overshare of the moment. Get ready. Let's make sure I can get this out. They were much older than I am. So I don't want to say they're old, but they were much older than I am. And this was going to be their last place they live. And the guy actually asked me if I intended to move in. And I said, no, I'm just going to, it's a rental. And he said, okay, cool. Because I don't want to move. I'm going to stay here till I die. And he says, but I promise that won't be too long. So I thought, okay, fair enough. And because of their age and their situation, I didn't use the binder strategy. I didn't do anything. I just left our rent alone at too low of an amount. And then, unfortunately, he did pass away, and the spouse moved into assisted care. So for about 3 years, I lost a little bit of money on that property. I don't know if I've ever shared that before. But now it's rented out at the right amount. And holy cow, that place is a cash producing machine. Chris Miller. Well said. You use current market rents to determine yield. I use market rent after all renovations. Yep, good. Market rent, maybe a little less, just for a little bit of safety in there. Brandon, howdy. Hey, Dion, I just wanted to thank you. Recently, a seller accepted my over asking price offer on a very competitive listing. I offered an additional $20K in hand money, and that sealed the deal. Thank you. Awesome. Remember, the list price was just a number that meant something to the seller. At what you're paying with what you called over, is it still going to get your yield? Still can be a great deal. I've offered over asking. I've offered under asking. I've negotiated. I've tried to negotiate every time, and it wouldn't matter. I make offers I would stand by if negotiation didn't work, but never hurts to try. I can surf Marco's question there. Dividend Dave. My chat moved. Back up. Here we go. Dividend Dave. Howdy. Got the mold problem in my tenants unit taken care of. They've never been happier. Awesome. Happy tenants. Don't trash a place. Good job. Tom, I'm going to make a seller finance offer on a house tomorrow. I hope my mom accepts my offer. Oh, my mom. Only promise my mother ever made to me was she promised to kill me first if the apocalypse ever came. Gotta love Catholics. And then Tom took back a message to make me wonder forever what he said. Tom, to Chester, hey, all is well at the shop, getting maintenance on the truck. That's the one thing a lot of people don't consider, especially as owner operators, downtime for maintenance or repairs. So Tom asks, I wonder if Dion would accept a seller finance offer on his 100% equity house. I kind of agree with Matt, the lumberjack landlord, and Michael Zuber that anybody can overpay for our properties whenever they want. But I would say probably no. Matt and Mike would probably take seller financed offers on paid off properties because of the side of their portfolios and what makes the most sense. And it's a place they don't have to take care of or think of. No tenants, toilets, or termites. They're just going to have the income, own the note, do whatever they want. I wanted the financial freedom. And I said it a little bit at the beginning of this video, the type of life that I can now have and have had for 3 months wasn't imaginable before that. I didn't think it could be the way that it is. That escape of, Zuber says all the time, every day is Saturday, but imagine if no day was ever Monday. That's not so much every day is Saturday, but no Mondays, ever. You never have starting a work week. Imagine how you feel when one of your friends is starting their work week. Even on a new job that they love. Dividend Day. I never in my life thought I'd have to protect my tenant from neighbor's aggressive dog. The wonders of being a landlord. And maybe a good justification for One, a certified letter warning them so that if there is an incident with the dog, your insurance can go after them. Just like if you have a dangerous tree in your neighbor's yard and it falls on your house, that's an act of God. And your insurance will cover you. But if you send a certified letter saying your tree is dangerous, I would probably start that with the dog. Mad76, howdy. And Chris Miller also took a message back to make me lose sleep tonight and wonder forever what it was. 000, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. I appreciate you too. I'll make sure I'm not missing anything here. Okay. Beach builder. Yep. RV pad will definitely make money. Just put it in hip camp. You'll do good. Awesome. That's all. Hey, Dion, I asked this question earlier today. I am in Denver and want to house hack a 2 to 4 unit. The realtor that I am working with, I think I saw this question. Yep. The realtor that I'm working with is telling us that with current rates, I will need to go with short-term rental, other unit. I don't want to do that with my first property and the volatility with short-term rental. What do you recommend? So the realtor that I'm working with is telling me that the current rates, so they're probably telling you that if you want to cash flow, short-term rentals will make more money. If you don't want to do that, maybe consider midterm rentals. So traveling nurses where you get 6 to 10 months or whatever of the same tenant. And you have a program with the hospital where, so even when it does revolve, you have access to more tenants. All of mine right now are long-term rentals. I've considered doing short-term, and the last time that I wanted a tenant to move out so I could short-term rental that place, they asked for almost a $500 a month increase when during the binder strategy. So I sadly accept a $500 a month increase instead of going short-term rental. I really just wanted to try it for the experience, make videos, share the experience. But money's the thing. If you're house hacking a 2 to 4 unit and a 2 unit, you're probably not going to cash flow, possibly. You're probably going to have a little bit of expense, but remember, will it cash flow once you move out? That's the way I look at that. On a 3 unit, it's 50-50. On a 4 unit, you should be cash flowing even while you live there. That it's not that I wouldn't work with that agent. I would make sure the agent knew that you're the investor and that they might think there's more money in short-term rental, but there's also amidst that real estate X factor. Let me know if you want that explained. But you don't want to do the work to get the income from short-term rentals. And then what if something like an HOA change or a municipality change or the local hotels win the lawsuit and you can no longer do short-term rentals and they use that as the reason why you could buy a property and now it's an alligator. That's what I would recommend. Did I give a clear answer there? You date your agent, you marry the property. Choose wisely when you marry. And if you want great advice on how to choose poorly, I got that guy for you. Chester. Okay, back. How's the offer on the duplex coming? Last time I remember from Zuber, you've been tracking this one since August. So I was tracking it since August. And I will be buying another property, but not today. I was talking with a friend who I don't think knows I have a YouTube channel, but knows I own rental properties. And in the conversation, they are set up perfectly to do a house hack. They're looking to buy a property. So I'm hand-holding him through the process. He's making the offer. He's probably going to get it. I think we're going to go with an actual offer and then an escalation clause up to what makes sense. I'll run the numbers for him. So I'm passing on what I think is a great deal to help him. Also because I'm lazy. I did the same thing last November. I helped a friend get her first duplex. Yes, I will acquire more properties. The cash flow builds up. It's a terrible problem to have. But I'm not Matt, the lumberjack landlord, or Michael Zuber, who I respect both of them. They are doing great things and sharing good information. I don't have the goal of lots of units. My goal was the most amount of cash flow from the least amount of units. So I'm not really in a hurry to add units. So that's what's happening with that small multifamily, which I have been tracking since August. Lauren, 2 thumbs up for members only on Fridays. Awesome. Thank you. Perfect. That works out good for me too. Tom, I will give your book suggestion a go. Currently listening to Real Estate by the Numbers. Nice. Hence the earlier question. Not a fan of the narrator, no. Oh. If it didn't take, and I want to say an hour to make 10 minutes of the book, I would just offer to narrate it for Jay Scott and put his book into my voice if people like it. I know that my voice can beat the robot narrator from Amazon on the first Zuber book. So I'm doing that again, but it's just such a massive time commitment. And I am trying not to make money. Weird other problem to have. Cody, howdy. Midday Friday would work, 10 or 11 Pacific time. Okay. Army Phaser, howdy. 30 minutes late. Getting better. Awesome. Hopefully you listened to me on like 1.75 or 2 speed all the way up here. Been a chipmunk while you catched up. Words are hard. Tom, oops, forgot to give you a like. Nice. Every time you hit the like button, somebody retires before Matt. Cody, what's your least favorite property? Have you considered selling it? Why have you decided to keep it? My least favorite property. Should I overshare again? My least favorite property would be my single family house that I purchased before I was an investor. It's a single family. It's the worst cash on equity return that I have on any of my properties. It's a good cash on cash return, but cash on equity, it's terrible. It's paid off. It's rented out to Section 8 for $2,200 a month, so it's great. I'm happy. The tenants there, like they have some problems, and then they have kids with some problems. So like, it's a nice area. They get to live near a lake, boat access, like, basketball, tennis courts. Like, it's a nice area for them to live. Happy for the family. So it's my least performing cash on equity property. So it's my least favorite. But I kept it through a divorce. So this little tiny petty part of me is like, nope, you win as long as you keep it. And maybe every now and then show her a rent check or something. I don't know. I'm not that petty. I don't do that because I don't want to communicate with her. So that's it. So I've never considered selling it. Although, no, that's not true. I have considered selling it. I thought if I sold it and I took the gains, I could pay off 2 mortgages on 2 duplexes and greatly increase cash flow, reduce the number of units I have to maintain, roofs, water heaters, foundations, whatever that can go wrong. That was on a septic. So like get rid of some problems and increase cash flow. But then I'm petty. Tom, curious, is REA Centers more than one person? It is 2 people's. Yes. Larry, howdy. From Spokane, Eastern Washington, Northern Idaho, state line area over here. Nice. Hopefully you guys are getting ready for the winter because Idaho had the worst one in 10 years last year. That was rough. Trucking landlord, howdy. Have you ever had bed bugs in your rentals? I have not yet. I don't know if it's much of a Washington problem, but I think they can happen anywhere. I think it's somebody moves in something that has them in it. I haven't had it. So literally, if it ever happens, I'm going to be in the same boat as somebody watching. I'd have to Google, go to YouTube. What do you do when this happens? I'm sure that there is a procedure that you follow. You want to be thorough, and you have to notify other tenants because it's small multifamily. It's going to be an expense. And to be very clear, remember, expenses do not impact cash flow. So you're not paying for the fix. Over years, your tenants are paying you rent, of which you set aside 10% for repairs and maintenance and 5% for vacancy. So 15% of gross rents is going into this account. Once that account is to a certain point, yes, you put it into your investing fund so you invest faster, but that reserve account is what is used to pay for those expenses. So if it ever happens, the tenants have already paid for that problem. Rob, howdy. Had bed bugs in VA once. Yeah, can't imagine. That would suck. Travis, howdy. If you're a bed bug, it's just an expense. Add it to the expense column. What do I fear as an owner? Catastrophic event. Make sure you have insurance in place. No, what? Because somebody reached out. I wish I could remember who, but I have the email. They have a channel or a podcast or something. And they said, hey, we're doing a Halloween special. And we want to do scary, spooky landlord stories. So I racked my brain for a week because I was just going to make like a 5 or 10 minute video, send it to them, help their channel. Can't think of any. Like Like the worst is somebody called me and said, hey, our septic's not working. So I was like a phone call, text to the handyman, couldn't resolve it. Phone call to plumber, resolved it. Like 20 minutes worth of work. That's the nightmare. So I did make a video for the scary, spooky Halloween special thing. Trucking landlord, you know, a couple, it's not common. Yep. Tom, not easy to use the phone when signal drops. That is why I didn't do a lot of live streams when I was doing my 1 month driving around the country, because there's not signal everywhere. But so, what is the real estate X factor? So, as brief as possible. The real estate X factor is there's like an XY axis line. The further up the risk you're willing to go, the more money you could make. The further up the line of work you're willing to do, the more money you could make. So if you're going short-term rental that you self-manage, so that's the most amount of work, but it's a high amount of risk because the ability to do short-term can go away by your HOA, municipality, a change in your area where the draw for short-term goes away or it becomes saturated. So there's a lot of risk, but a lot of work, most money. Short-term rental that you have a property manager manage is a little bit less work, same risk, still more money. Long-term rental or mid-term rental that you self-manage, that you have a property manager for. Long-term that you self-manage, that you have property, the further in you go, REITs, syndications, the further down you get, the less risk there is. The further risk, the more risky ones you take, the more possible gain there is, but not guaranteed. And the less work that you're willing to do, the less money you're going to make. So find a balance on XY. I'll do the risk of my properties have mortgages. There is debt risk there. It's also a form of asset protection, and it's the best cash on cash return that you're going to get, because if you pay all, the more money you put in, the lower your cash on cash return usually goes. So I found my point. I will self-manage long-term rentals. At some point, I might have a property manager. I doubt it, but that would be if I would become like an expat and live in another country, then I might do that. I don't see it happening. So that's the real estate X factor. How much risk are you willing to take? How much work are you willing to do? The higher you go on either one, the more potential money you can make. Beach builder, Dion, when your rentals count as income, is that the total amount of rent or income after expenses? Depends on what you're doing. This is the beauty of it. We live in a world that encourages people to become investors. When you go to pay taxes, rental income is after expenses and after depreciation. So while I made $128,000 in profit last year, I share my actual numbers. Don't sue me, bro. I carried forward an $8,900 loss when it came to taxes. When it comes to buying the next property, lenders take out depreciation. So while I had write-offs, my profit looked like six figures. I could buy the next property. So it would get the best of both worlds. Here's the really cool thing, and this is a nugget to file away when you retire early. The Obamacare healthcare system has a thing where if you make less than a certain amount of money, you get money towards your healthcare. It's more detailed than that. That's how my redneck brain processes it, right? If you make a little bit amount of money, they'll put money towards your healthcare. That counts depreciation. I had a negative $8,900 income when it came to healthcare. Makes it kind of early to retire early. Makes it kind of easy to retire early. So there's a golden nugget for you. That healthcare program is based on your income. And even if your income is six figures, with depreciation and write-offs factored in, it can look like you are dead broke. It's almost like we have a system of encouragement. People think of the tax system and they go, well, we want to tax the rich. The more money you make, the more taxes you should pay. That's not how it works at all. We need corporations to grow to provide jobs. So corporations get a tax break. They get to write things off. They have a corporate tax instead of an income tax. We need people to invest and own stocks so the companies can grow, own real estate so we can have houses. All of that has to happen. So we have tax incentives. That's why when you have a politician who, out of the best quote I heard was, out of 4 years, there was the politician who 1 year he had to pay $750 in taxes. The other 3, he didn't pay any. And everybody hates it. The year that and this is the quote, the year that he paid $750, his accountant should have been fired. Because of our program, he should have never paid taxes any of those years because the system is set up to encourage people to do that. That's how this works for real estate investing too. Eventually, you will have a property paid off. You'll be at the end of a depreciation schedule. You'll make so much rent and you will have to pay taxes. That sucks. You're actually filthy rich. I'm very sorry if you're in that situation. That was sarcasm. In case you watched Black Adam, you know that we have to explain when we use sarcasm. Brock, howdy. That was what I did today. Walked down and watched Black Adam. And if you want a 30-second review of Black Adam, here you go. No spoilers. First 30 minutes sucked so bad, I wanted to walk out. Couldn't believe I was wasting my time. Everything that happened after that was great. Great movie. Totally worth watching. Loved it. Make it past the first 30 minutes. Brock, good evening, Dion. Am I allowed to use my VA loan on a property, live there for a while, and then refinance out of the VA loan so I can increase the cash flow and or use it again on another property? Yes, wouldn't recommend it, yes. You can use your VA loan multiple times. The second, third, fourth consecutive times, your loan origination amount can go up to a little bit higher and then it plateaus there. Unless you have a service-connected disability of 10% or more, the loan origination fee is waived forever. You can have multiple VA loans. You don't have to refinance out of it to use it again. All VA loan does really is takes away of your mortgage insurance and lets you get in for zero down. So it's not like it's a loan product on its own. It lets the lenders do that with those two things. The VA system is giving you mortgage insurance for the lender. It's probably a more eloquent way to put that, but that's what came out. You can use your VA loan. It has the same clause as an FHA loan. It's usually intend to occupy the property for at least a year. Lenders can have 10 months or 2 years. They can do whatever they want because it's their money. That's with FHA. I think VA is always at least a minimum of 1 year. Lenders could probably do more, but they can't do less. To refinance to increase, you could always recast a VA loan and not refi. I don't recommend refinancing because owner-occupied VA loan is going to get you one of the best rates. So if you refinance out of VA, you're going to get worse rates generally. But you can recast. You could say, go to your lender and say, look, hey, I'm putting $20,000 onto this loan. I want you to recast so it doesn't add to the end. It just takes that amount off and recast the loan at the current interest rate. Very involved process, a lot more difficult to explain than I just did in the last 25 seconds. So talk to a lender and find out what your options are. But yes, you can use your VA loan several times. But just to give you a golden nugget, Brock, while you're here with me, let me share why I've not used my VA loan. Two things. One, I don't want to be 100% leveraged. I was 100% leveraged on my first house that I bought because it was a first-time buyer program where they actually, like Bank of America is doing right now, no mortgage insurance, wrap the closing costs in, no down payment, no closing costs. Like I literally, I think I did $4,000 to buy a better rate at the time, but I don't think I spent any money on buying that house at all. And then 2008 happened. And later I refinanced even to a higher amount to give my ex her portion of equity. That was fun. I'm not bitter. So I was really underwater. I owed way more than what it was worth. So I've got this kind of little mental fear of I like to put a down payment. So even when I first bought my first duplex with a 5% down conventional property, I had mortgage insurance so that I was at least 5%. I probably could have used the VA loan then and done 5% down because you can also do as much down as you want and use your VA loan. But here's the second reason why I didn't use it. I knew I was going to be an investor for a long time. And there used to be a cap on your VA loan, how much you can borrow. That went away in 2020, so there's no longer a cap. So back in the day, in the dinosaur days, I was trying to keep my VA loan in my back pocket just in case while I was growing my portfolio and on the road to financial freedom, the perfect deal pops up. At the time when I don't have a down payment, I would then have my VA loan available to use. I'm actually considering using my VA loan on the next purchase or maybe the next one. I'm buying a fourplex, mostly because I can, not because I want to, but I should do something with the money. But it's because when I was growing my portfolio, my goal was to stay at about 70% leveraged. I wanted to make sure I was gaining appreciation on the biggest multiplier of what I can invest while still having that buffer of 30%. So where if I ever had to walk away from an asset, I didn't have to write a check to do it. Once I retired, I've moved that marker down to 50%. I'm around 40%, but I'd like to be at 50% leveraged. Much more safe while I don't have a W-2 income, but still gaining appreciation on more than what I invested myself. If I buy the next property with a VA loan with nothing down, I still think when I run the numbers, I'm probably going to be less than 50% as an overall portfolio loan to value. Hope that made sense. Tom, I don't have a reliable handyman. Local real estate meetup groups, face-to-face reviews from other investors in the area to find the people, local Facebook groups. That's what I would do for handyman. There are probably some apps that you can use. I use Thumbtack. It's not really handyman friendly. It's more like construction company friendly because they have to be large enough to have a tech side basically to be on the Thumbtack app. You could probably find some handymen on there and they'd probably be great if they're on there. But I've found 2 of my 3 handymen from local real estate meetups and then have more than one. Lauren, I'm working closely with Stephan Parker. Great, yeah, good guy. And we are, so as far as the agents goes, great. We are discussing our strategy for investing in our current market conditions. Nice. I would recommend that. He's got a good team too. He is a part of Mosaic. I don't know if I'm allowed to say their name, but too late. But that's his brokerage. And my agent that I work with, David, is also part of that group and a really good knowledge base to be pulling from. Theo, howdy. Just catching alive. When are they usually on? Tuesdays, 4 p.m. Pacific every single week. And then I leave them on. So you can watch replays anytime. My shorter 17-minute lives, because that's how long my hourglass does, can be random. I'm just trying to do those whenever I've got a good topic or a good question to cover and some time to get on and do it so that it's not like a job, but it's something that I can do for the people who can't click on a 2-hour video. If you want that short video, that's where those questions are answered. Those are, I actually wouldn't originally was calling them random midday live streams, but they weren't getting a lot of views. So I started putting thumbnails on saying, here's the question that came up. Seems to perform better. Surf Marco, Dion, Matt, Mike, all different strategies like Catan. Exactly. And my chat moved. I'm sure I'm not missing. Trucking landlord, handyman gets sketchy. I've been through 5 or 6. And so they don't watch my content. So I'm going to be as transparent as possible. Here's my experience with handy people, because I've had men and women. They generally couldn't hold down a regular job. This isn't like a side hustle for a lot of them. They are great at their skill set, but they're inconsistent. Their prices will fluctuate. Unless they run a handyman business with several employees where they've really turned it into a business, it's generally 1 or 2 people who can go out and do projects together who like to make the money, but don't rely on one because they're scheduled. That's been my experience. My handy people are great. They do great work, but never on the timeline that I want. And sometimes I'll look and I go, this is like twice what I should have paid for this. But here's the 8 times they worked for less than what I would have got anybody else to do it. So I just let it balance out. I don't generally argue it too much. It's good to be able to be in Thailand or Colombia and send a text message, not even knowing what time of day it actually is here, and knowing that it's going to be handled when a tenant has an issue. That's the importance of a handy person. Dividend Dave reported the dog issue to animal control and the owner got a talking to. So far it's worked. No dog issues. Good. Good strategy. Having worked in law enforcement, there were some times where people would call us with issues like that. And the normal police mantra is, this is a civil issue. Here's dispute resolution for our county that you can call. Here's your resources, but the police really aren't going to get involved. So animal control, good call. Chester, to Tom, great book. Dion, here's one I'd recommend for brand newbies on mindset. The Magic of Thinking Big by Dr. David Schwartz. It's likely written about mid-50s, but applicable today. There are some books like The Richest Man in Babylon and Think and Grow Rich that really don't have a time period. It's mindset that works so far every time since they've been written. Tom, I can't even get them to return phone calls or make appointments. Yeah, that's why you have to have more than one. Tom, I like the old school books. Me too. Chester, nice. I do want to check out Real Estate by the Numbers by Jay Scott and Dave Meyer, though, too. Oh, that reminds me. I have to give that book away today. Get to give that book away today. And all the dice are way over there. Way over there, too. Don't go anywhere. Okay. So the first thing I need to do is to look at that video and see how many questions there are, or comments, because the book is going to be given away to somebody who commented on that video. If I can find it. So I did a video with Jay Scott about real estate by the numbers. It looks like there are 48 comments. I replied to each one, so that means there's 24 comments-ish. So then a 30-sided dice. Do I have that here? That's a 60, that's 100. All right, so I will use a 60-sided dice, 1 through 30 twice, basically. Oh, my brother got me a nice little crystal dagger. Why is that on my desk? So I'm going to go through the comments, just 1 through the bottom, in the order that they showed up on my feed, to give away the book from Jay Scott. 49. So that would be 19. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Jonathan Elmore, real estate by the numbers would be fantastic until the Dion book comes out. I agree. Thank you. So Jonathan Elmore, I have to somehow, because he's probably not here, let him know that he won an Audible version of Real Estate by the Numbers. Cool. So how do I make sure people find out? I guess I do a short video on who won. And then I see there was a super chat. I want to make sure I get to from Derek. Howdy, Derek. Thank you for that. Sitting on some capital, thinking about a cash purchase and possibly cash out refi if rates drop. Had so many other thoughts, but got into the Tito's. Cheers. I am actually a fan of Tito's, but somebody who likes me got me 7 Alien Skull vodkas, so I have 3 more to go. Water's good. So here's a couple things to consider while you have cash sitting on the side. Every day or month that goes by as you're able to add, your amount for down payment, closing costs, immediate repairs, and reserves goes up. So more and more options open to you. If you're considering a cash purchase, remember that if you do a cash out refinance later, your rate's going to be worse. A cash out is not as good as a purchase because, and your appraisal is probably going to be a bit less. They're usually going to be based on 6-month-old data because you don't have a human currently trying to buy the property. So it might not appraise for as much as you want it to when it happens, depending on how long you go, when the rates come down. Rates may never come down. They may never be this low again. So I always invest as though this was the rate and it could go up. So I buy the rate down and almost every time, because I plan on better than my marriage is keeping properties until death do we part. So I would buy the rate down to try to do that. But here's something to consider. If you have enough for a cash purchase, you possibly have enough to do a successful BRRRR strategy because you're not using hard money. You're not using money that has a timeline. You can use a cash purchase to buy a property, less value than what you were looking at, take the money difference and use it for the repairs. And you don't have the holding cost. You don't have the percentage that you're paying. You don't have the deadline of the hard money hitting its cap. This is actually something I've considered over the last couple of years. I've slowly built up more and more money into the savings because I hit financial independence in 2018, true financial freedom, where I don't look at price tags. I mean, I'm not going to have 5 Lamborghinis, but I could go out and buy a couple of them. As that builds up, I have a search set up for BRRRR properties. Now, I don't recommend BRRRR. It's an advanced strategy for somebody starting out because hard money is expensive. It has a timeline. You can mess up your rehab timeline. You can mess up your rehab cost. You're counting on an appraisal. It might not happen. If you're Millennial Mike, you started 2 BRRRRs 6 months ago and then rates doubled. Like all these things can happen. Have an out. You have an out for a BRRRR strategy. You can buy cash, maybe refinance later, maybe just you're buying cash flow. It's probably going to be not as good a return because you are, the more money you put down, the lower your cash on cash return generally goes. But if you buy it cheaper, do the repair, and then refinance, if you can, if it ends up making sense, if it still makes money, create cash flow and get all of your money back for the purchase and the repairs, depending on how much it ends up appraising for. And if it doesn't, you have to leave some money in there. It's not the end of the world, because you actually said in your question or your statement, you were thinking of a cash purchase anyway. Another option. And I'm looking at where I was. And my stupid thing keeps recommending that I put ads in here, but I'm trying to do this with no ads. So, okay, Chester, great book. Reminded me about the book. I wrote down the name. Tom Klein says the book is so good so far, minus the narrator's voice. So I have it on 1.35 and it goes better. Ah, there you go. Daniel, howdy. Are you still a part owner of the truck driving school? Did you receive payouts from that? Ooh, good question. No and no, but let me explain. I'm not really part owner of the truck driving school. What I was demoted down to president and given a 10% share if a sale happened. So I had what are called golden handcuffs. And this is just my opinion, not the opinion of the school. I worked there. I was the president. I was fairly familiar with this. Current valuation of the school is around 20 million. So if it were to sell, I would gross 2 million. I'd be paying taxes out of that. So I had $2 million golden handcuffs as long as I worked there. I walked away from that. When I quit working there, not only did I not get like here's a severance package, we're giving you a bunch of money. I just walked away and left $2 million sitting on the table. But I think I'm in the same position as somebody else that I often recommend also retires. As long as I worked there, having grown the company from 6 staff to 60, from making like $60,000 a year to several $1 million a year, there would never be a sale as long as I worked there. The other person that I recommend should retire often, and I'm not going to name in this video, in this part of the video, I don't think there will be a sale as long as he works for his company. The owners make too much money off of his labor. Why would they ever sell? So he'll probably retire and also walk away from any type of golden handcuffs that they have. So that's how it worked out for me. Was not technically owner, although I did make 10% of whatever the company did, and then I got 10% if the company was ever sold. So it's like being an owner because I had those handcuffs. We had a contract for that, so that there was like it wasn't just a this is what we think we'll do. Like it was literally spelled out. I had my own attorneys go through it, and I walked away from it. That's how strong financial freedom is. I literally had $2 million sitting on the table and said, no, thanks. But I'm not stupid. I know it might not have ever sold as long as I worked there. Tom, maybe Dion will have a book raffle and you can win it. I just did that. I will do that again. Generally what I do, so like if Jonathan Elmore reaches out and says, but I already own Cash Flow or Real Estate by the Numbers by Jay Scott and Dave Meyer, then I will go, cool, you won a book. I would prefer that it's finance or real estate related, but it could be any Audible book that you want. That's the intent of rolling that. And while I appreciate the super chats, it actually shows Google somebody likes the content enough to contribute to it. It's amazing. Those kind of giveaways I'm trying to do for anybody who just makes a comment, because not everybody can do super chats. I totally understand, but everybody can have a chance at winning the book when I do those. Laura, howdy. Hope you're doing well. Hopefully your storm stuff is taken care of. Hopefully. Tom, glad you mentioned the tree and dog certified letter. My neighbor's tree is leaning on my fence in HOA property, and I had no idea what to do about it. Yep, just a letter, certified letter. If you have it, email is good too, so that you have a record, a date and timestamp, anything that you could do to make it an official, not just something you said to them over the fence one day kind of communication. Beach Builders, thank you. Rob, as I sit here picking up rocks from the sidewalk, I had to brake on my DIY fixer duplex and realize, oh, this is why Dion doesn't buy fixers. I haven't bought fixers yet, although every now and then there is something to do. I did buy one that needed a roof, which meant a couple of phone calls. I didn't go do the roof myself. Should I buy any others that I knew needed work? My first house hack duplex, the unit that I moved into, was tore up. That was a mad tenant. I don't know if I've ever said this. The tenant was so angry, 72 holes, punched holes in the walls and door handles jammed into the walls of drywall. So I got really good at doing drywall in my first duplex house hack. But for the most part, I like to buy rent-ready or already occupied properties that don't need a lot of work. Chester. Exactly. Defer taxes as long as humanly possible. Otherwise, get rid of your CPA immediately. Exactly. REI Stoners. Hey, Tom, eventually we are going to start a YouTube channel telling our story, but not today. Let me know when I can help. But hey, what does it mean when a seller is accepting a backup offer? So let's say you're the seller. You have a property for $500,000 is what you want. And somebody makes you an offer of $550,000. They're over asking. So, and they have proof of funds. They have a, what do you call it? Could be cash. So it's proof of funds. Everything looks great. But somebody else says, look, I know you got an offer. I totally understand. I would offer $500,000 with a conventional loan. So it's the most I can do. It's as much as I have. And then now as the seller, you're in a better negotiation position with your first offer. You're getting 550 and they have proof of funds, but then they do an inspection and they say, these are all the things I want you to fix. So I'm only going to pay 400,000. Your house is a mess. I don't want to buy it. Thinking that you're going to negotiate down to 520, 530, whatever. You can say, I'm willing to negotiate some things, but I have an offer of 500 sitting there from somebody who also has a letter of pre-qualification and is intent on buying it. So that's a backup offer. It's nothing official ever happens with a backup offer. Like, so half my properties were purchased in what I call second position. It's not a real thing. It's just how I term they have an accepted offer. I communicated with them and said, my offer still stands. So if their offer falls through, I'm still here. So half of my deals were second position. One ended up being great because it was a 1031. Meaning they had a set number of time to identify the property, then a set number of days to close on the property. Their deal fell through and I was second, so they came back and accepted my offer. I had strong negotiation position because I knew they were coming up to the end of their timeline and needed to close. So the person who has the ability to walk away has the power. If I walked away, this person wouldn't do their 1031 and would owe a bunch of taxes on their other property. So I was able to negotiate another $10,000 off the property. So I wouldn't always share that you're doing a 1031 with your buyer unless your state requires it. So that's what a backup offer means. They have accepted one, they're under contract. So that one's had official communications back and forth saying you are under contract. It'll go pending on all the listings. The backup is you've made an official offer. So they know how much, they know what funding source. They know your timeline usually, and the timeline is more flexible because you're in second position. So if their first offer falls through, financing during the inspection period, whatever the deal is where that person backs out, instead of reposting the property, their agent goes, look, the work's already done. We've got an offer sitting over here for whatever, if they accepted it, if they'll accept that amount. They might come back and go, hey, look, you made 500, your offer's still good. Our deal fell through. What'd you do? 510 or 520 or something. And you're still in negotiation. But that's a second position or a backup offer. Good question. Art T. Howdy. Dion, how would you handle this situation? Tenant is smoking in unit you sent notice to, but can't necessarily prove it, even though it might smell like smoke. Tenant keeps lying. Good question. Be ready to do smoke remediation now or when they move out. A lot of people will say, I had a tenant in there for a year and they were smoking, and I had another one say I had a tenant in there for 26 years and they were smoking. When you do smoke remediation, in my mind, it doesn't matter if it was 2 weeks or 27 years. It's going to be just as bad. And the process for me goes exactly the same. I actually have a listed out when you're doing smoke stuff. So their deposit is probably going to be completely used up in this this fix that you're going to do. So first, you're going to have to remove all carpet, curtains, windows, and screens, because anything that air can pass through is going to have the smell in it. Wash the walls with a mixture of vinegar and water. Have vents cleaned by a professional. Sacrifice a goat. Kills paint. Use the oils-based, not water-based, because it'll lock in the smell. Then paint, new LVP flooring, new blinds, new window screens. Rent an ozone machine. Leave for a few days. Check, and possibly have to leave it for a few more days. Rinse and repeat any part that you absolutely have to, depending on how many goats you can afford. So that's the expense to fix smoke smell after a month or a couple of years. It's going to cost you that much. It's really hard to prove anything that happens inside a house, but it sounds like that's a tenant you're probably just not going to want to renew the lease with. Find out what your local ordinances are on what you can and can't do. You can also say it's a lease violation and go through an eviction. You going to the property to say it smells like smoke in here is probably not good enough. A couple of witnesses and the strength of the smell, so handyman's written statements or any contractors. Tenants usually have a defensible position if you don't have actual proof, because they can say, I smoke outside, and when I come in, I smell like cigarettes. So your house smells like cigarettes. I'm obeying the lease. I'm not smoking inside. Have a plan and be ready for whenever they move out. For me, and I don't know that too many of my tenants watch my content, and if they do, they probably don't watch the full 2-hour long videos. I don't really care that they smoke inside. Once I know they are, the expense is there. Their deposit's going to go to all of those things. Just know that you expect it. Have it in the lease. Communicate with them. It's kind of like the people that say, oh, I don't allow pets, and then I think my person has a pet in there. The damage is done. And forcing anything like that's going to create a tenant turnover. That's going to be expensive when you do it. So for me, unless the other neighbors were complaining about the smell, then I would probably take more action. Tough situation to be in. Because, and if this is you, please don't take offense, smokers can't tell what they smell like. One of the first things smoking does is it kills all the sensors in your nose, and you can't tell. One of the best things about working at the truck driving school is you were not allowed to smoke. And if you smoked on your day off, you'd be fired. And it was legal. Went to court over it twice. And both times the court said, yep, you can absolutely do that. Wish it was that easy with tenants. Tom, if I start a prequel for VA loan or of any kind, are lenders able to pivot on loan type, or do I have to start over? They can pivot on lend type, but sometimes underwriting can add timelines that you would have to have the room to do in the deal that you're doing. So when does your seller expect to close, and will there be enough time to do that? So there are a lot of times where people make cash offers and then close on a loan as long as they do it in the right amount of time. It's possible to do that. Yeah, so you can pivot in the middle of it. Cody, what was your most fun day since you retired? What are you most looking forward to next year? Trying to think of the most fun day would probably be the first day that I didn't get a call from the school trying to figure out how to do something I was doing before I left. Well, I did train people for the last 3 years because the goal was I would travel around the country and open up new campuses. So everything was in place to run the existing campuses without my direct day-to-day interaction, I thought. And then I retired, and I would get 10 plus phone calls a day or emails on how do I do this, and different agencies that know I retired and that kind of stuff. It's super Betty. The funnest day is when my friends go to work. And I think that was me. And I was stuck there doing that. Now some friends are on a timeline where they're going to retire in a year. And it's going to be a fun year watching them go through. This is the process to get right to your freedom number so you can retire. That's going to be amazing. But I've done a lot of fun things. I think the weirdest fun thing is the mental shift of going from I'm working 50 to 60 hours a week to make money to invest because I want financial freedom. And then going, okay, I'm at financial independence. Now I'm at financial freedom and I'm going to retire. it's really hard to shift from saving to spending. And there's going to be a question that I ask in a video coming up on three mindsets that we have that are keeping us poor. Things that I'm an expert at, because for 40 years of my life, these are three things I did. Most of us know what we make, and we know how much we can save and how much we can invest. We know what our cash flow is. We know how much we make an hour, how much we per month, per year. But if I held a gun to your head right now and said, how much did you spend on food last month? Your life depends on answering this question right now. The people who are going to reach financial freedom would have a pretty good idea. The people who are going to do it on a timeline would have a chart, an image that says, this is my expenses. Hardly anybody knows what we spend. We figure out our freedom number going forward, but have you actually looked at what you did last month or the month before? So going into retirement, it's been weird figuring out, I need to spend money. I need to do things like rent quads or rent Sea-Doos, or I don't have enough money to go on a date, but you can do other things that cost money that you don't have to sell your soul for. That's been the most fun. Figuring out how to spend money, because it's been a decade of every penny that came in was invested for financial freedom. Don't need to do that anymore. Weird. That's what I'm looking forward to next year, is figuring out how to get more of my friends to financial freedom and meet more people who are financially free, so that they can have the same thing where, Zuber says every day is Saturday. I kind of like no Mondays, never having a Monday. I just thought of that in this video earlier, and I think I'm going to start using that. Good question. Thank you, Tom, for that question. Cody. Theo, what are some things you did that you listed to qualify as a real estate professional when you were working for your other job? I never did. I worked 60 hours a week in my W-2, 50 to 60. There were some weeks I only worked 50, so I'm super lazy, remember? But there were some weeks I worked 50. Two of the rules to qualify as a real estate professional is, one, you have to work at least 751 hours in real estate, and two, you have to work more in real estate than you do in your W-2 job. Don't commit tax fraud. However, if you are smart, like Matt, lumberjack landlord, and you have a job where you work a ton of hours, but your spouse qualifies as a real estate professional, then you can do it. I can't afford a spouse either. I think having a spouse is more expensive than dating, although you're supposed to only have one spouse at a time, right? That's weird. So I've never qualified as a real estate professional, although this year I might do it, because I retired July 5th. So a little over 6 months of the year was spent with a job, but 6 months was spent not, depending on how much I work in real estate for the rest of the year. Next year I will, but I won't have W-2 income to count it against. So this might be one of those weird years where I sit down with a CPA and go, hey, what are my options? That won't put me in jail. The ultimate house hack, right? But I'm not ready for that. So these are the ones I'm willing to do. Tom, Cody, are you the Cody from Christian and Cody? I don't think so. That's Cody Davis. Cody Davis is from Christian and Cody. Need to do more Cody things. You're just Cody doing Cody things. That's a great shirt. Tom, yeah, I like the creative deals. I do too. Cash flow, Johnny Ramirez. Howdy. What's up to real estate freaks? Cody, I agreed. I've done one seller financing, but would like to grow more like they did. Awesome. Great content from them too. So I highly suggest, if anybody's curious what we're talking about, that is Cody and Christian Multifamily Strategies here on YouTube. Sorry, my phone is going crazy and I'm just making sure it's not a handyman doing something I need to give. Yeah. I have somebody going out to look at, what is he doing? It's the gutters. The tenant said the gutter is dropping water on my flowers. Handyman's going to go fix it. Tom, I just want to grow enough for cash flow and leave children a mindset and more than their demon mother. Nice. Tom, so it sounds like your will be just like mine. all of the property is divided up into thirds because I have 3 kids. Each kid gets a third. Unless they spend a penny of the money on their mother, then the other 2 get half. Beach builder, Dion. As for aggressive dogs, many RV parks won't allow some dogs, breeds restrictions. Wondering if your insurance company have similar rules for your rental properties. Some do, some don't. So you ask your insurance for a list of breeds they don't allow. And if they have one that they don't allow, you go to your tenants and you say, this is why your dog breed is not allowed. If they have a emotional support thing, you lose your negotiation power there. But you can tell the tenant, I want renter's insurance that includes the property, me also named, and your type of dog to add to your insurance. I think mine have a weight limit of 60 pounds. Some will say aggressive breeds, but there's so much debate there. I always allow pets. It helps limit tenant turnover. You have more applicants because so many places don't allow pets. And you don't ever have to think of the BS made up paperwork that they just printed from the interwebs saying they have an emotional support animal, which is not real. You don't even have to think about it because I allow pets. The only thing you do have to do is if they provide an emotional support animal certificate, you can't charge a pet deposit or a pet fee for that animal. I do have a tenant that has an emotional support animal. One, and they have other animals, so they have a pet fee and a pet deposit. Bruno, howdy. New Jersey, I'm very sorry. If tenant applies for emotional rental assistance program and is approved, I must accept or I forfeit back rent collection. Very true. That is true. So that's an existing tenant that's in your property that is getting you the rent from the assistance program. That is true. You give up back rent, pursuing back rent if you don't do it, because a lot of times if you have a tenant who's behind on rent and you go to evict them here in our state, the other side of the country, the correct Washington, but the other side, you have to provide resources to the tenant if they're behind on rent when you serve your 3-day pay or quit start of your eviction process. So part of that process is also providing your tenants with, here are the resources of where you can go, which you then have to accept if they qualify. Rich, for Surf Marco, I recently refied my DW, too many acronyms, on a lot, have refs if you need them, referrals if you need them. Okay. I don't know why my brain just doesn't get the acronym, but I'm sure it's really stupid simple. I hate my memory. REI stoners. The paperback version of Real Estate by the Numbers has some great spreadsheets and visuals for people new to investing like us. Although I love audiobooks, I'm glad I bought the paperback. So that's another thing, REI stoners. I think there's a reason why Jay Scott didn't do an Audible version of his. He's got a book on rehabbing properties. It has a paper version, hardback or whatever, but it doesn't have, that I've seen, an Audible version. And I think it's because it's mostly charts and a lot of things that you explain to the reader through images. So good point. Tom, I know, right? They keep referring to the worksheets and spreadsheets. I'll check with Jay. I say Jay like I know him. Talked to him a couple times on Facebook. He's been on my channel once. I will reach out to Jay Scott and ask if they have a PDF version. A lot of times when you buy an Audible book, it'll refer, you can go to a website and get the PDF version so you can have those to look at when it's something that you really want to focus in on. Surf Marco to Rich. Sure, send me a message. What is a DW? Thank you so much. I'm not the only one. Okay. I don't want to refi because the place is in a manufactured house on 0.7 acres in a city and it was $500,000. Double what? Thank you. Oliver, howdy. Howdy on, doing my first duplex. Please, could you refresh how you structure your umbrella policy if it's your first duplex? I don't know that I would have an umbrella policy on the first duplex unless you have some other assets that are worth a lot. I didn't get umbrella policy until I had 4 properties, and probably should have done it when I had 3. The idea is if you have a lawsuit on a property that goes significantly above the insurance you have on that property, they can come after your other assets. If you have a lawsuit and you have 1 property and the amount goes far above that property and it's your only one, bankruptcy is an option. In that case, you can file bankruptcy instead of having an umbrella policy. It's probably better to have the umbrella policy. And it's better to use the 3 forms of asset protection that I talk about. But once you have 2 or 3 or 4 assets, if you have a claim on one property when you only have one and they were going to get it, and then it will go above that, you can file bankruptcy. But if you have that one and you don't want them to go after the other ones, that's when I would start adding the umbrella policy. So I added it once I got to 4. And originally it was $550 a year for $2 million in coverage. Now it's like $680 a year because inflation's a thing. So I hope that helps. Surf Marco to Rich. Thanks. I'm going to triple. Nice. Pretty nice. And it better be for 500,000. No kidding. Rich, that is where the money is. Exactly. Robert, do you have a video that you explain clauses to have in contracts? There's several videos where I reference them, but I don't know if I have a clauses video. I always go with 2. There might be more to consider. But the first clause is financing, which includes appraisal. So if you can't get the financing that you're suggesting, which goes away when you make a cash offer, but if you have an appraisal clause, and then sometimes you'll do an appraisal clause with, I'll do $5,000 or $10,000 more than appraisal. You'll cover the gap if you have the ability to, so that they're not as concerned about an appraisal being a little low. And then the second one is, they call it an inspection clause, but it doesn't mean that you have to pay for an inspection. It means that you have a period of time, somewhere between 5 and 10 days, you get to pick when you make the offer. Of those days, you get to make up your mind on if you actually want to pursue the property or not. So I've never gone and looked at a property and then made an offer. Not even when I was first starting out. I don't think I've ever done that as an investor. My first house in 2000, I went to several, wasted a lot of time with a real estate agent. I was a regular home buyer who caused the 2008 housing crash. But since being an investor, I've always made offers, and then when they get accepted, I will then go and do a drive-by, which means different things in different areas. But I'll go look at the property, make sure it's not next to a noisy club on a busy street, something else that you can't see from Google that might be a barrier. Look at the actual neighborhood, look for anything else that might be something that would tell me not to buy the property, and then I'll schedule the inspection. If I saw something I didn't like, I would back out during the inspection clause, that period, and not have an inspection done, because it's not a requirement to have an inspection. That's your period of time to make up your mind, generally by having an inspection and looking for things that would be a deal breaker. It's not a requirement. So those are the 2 that I always do. Even whenever the last 2 years, everybody's like, oh, you got to waive contingencies, you got to do this. And in 2021, in May, I closed on a duplex with those 2 contingencies in place. Offer at asking, closed $2,500 below asking. So it's not always, and it's not every time. And that was a time when everybody was saying that's what you had to do. Johnny Cashflow Ramirez, everything I've purchased needed something. So they always need something, and it's always unique. But I've had ones where it was like they need a ceiling fan, and a light at the end of the driveway. Like, that was it. I spent probably $300 total the first year owning that duplex. Total. That's what I look for. Laura, sorry I'm late again. No, not late. My work, for whatever reason, decided to have advisory meetings 2 Tuesdays in a row at 6 p.m., another 13-hour day, which is like a side hustle. They'll let overtime. Theo, can you tell us your must-haves in a rental agreement? No water beds. Painful lesson. No water beds. That's a must. No smoking inside as a deterrent. I don't know that it actually works. Must-haves in a rental agreement. A lease termination agreement that makes sense to me. I generally do it for at or a little bit above a full month's rent. I wouldn't want to hold somebody for 5 or 6 months rent if they want to break the lease for whatever reason. I just get that 1 extra month to help me with the tenant turnover. Everyone over 18's name, contact information, like those are the things that are important, because if you go to serve an eviction, you kind of need to know who's there. I'm trying to think of late fees have to be in the lease, how they're spelled out, how they're explained. I do $20 a day after the 5th day after the due date. So if their rent is due on the 1st, as of the 6th, it starts to be $20 a day. If their rent is due on the 8th, it's 5 days after that, and $20 a day. So it depends on how you structure your lease. Must-haves for leases. The waterbed thing is the only one I would know. I contacted my attorney. This I got from my brother. And I asked her, I said, look, if we ever have to go through an eviction, because I have her retained, I give $1,500 to an attorney to retain them in case you ever have an eviction. It makes you sleep a lot better at night knowing that's already in place. Kind of like contacting a plumber and an electrician that has 24-hour service to know who to call, what their process is, how they would bill, all of that kind of stuff, so that you don't have to worry that you might get a call at 10 o'clock at night that there's a plumbing issue. You're like, oh, I got a number saved in my phone. I don't even have to open Google. I know who's got 24-hour service, and here they go. So I asked the attorney, if we ever go through an eviction together, it's what you're doing, even though they're going to do all the work and you're just going to pay for it, is there any verbiage you would want in my lease to make your life easier? Because you want the attorney working in the court system where your properties are located that knows what works and what doesn't, to have that verbiage in your lease. So that's a great question. That's something I would add to the lease, because it's probably not going to be in one that you get from BiggerPockets, which has a lease from an attorney for every state. It could be, but it might not be. It might not be in what works in your county. It's not going to be on a lease you get from Apartments or Zillow. It's literally going to be, you take the lease that you got, however you acquired it, add that verbiage to it. Good question. Thank you. Oliver, how do you normally structure and make sure you include in your homeowner's insurance policy for your duplex properties? So I'm trying to think. Okay. $300,000 slip fall injury coverage, right? So that's kind of standard. The insurance policies offer that. Whenever you get an umbrella policy, they might also actually require increased insurance on vehicles, because your vehicles and your properties and all that falls under your umbrella. So that might be one thing that changes. And then the insurance companies will offer lender make right, which is whatever amount is owed on the mortgage is what's covered by your insurance. So if there was a burn down, they're going to take care of your mortgage so you don't have one. Cheaper, doesn't do you any good. So I do full replacement value. So if there's ever a burn down, my lender's not even going to know. They're going to get a notice that there's a problem, but they're going to keep getting the payments like normal, because the insurance company is going to pay to replace the building with a new structure. Costs a little bit more, but that's what the insurance is for. It's for a total build burn down. And I structure it with the highest deductibles that they will allow. So half of my properties have a $5,000 deductible, because that's what I've been able to negotiate. The other half has a $10,000 deductible. I will not touch insurance unless it's a huge problem, and it like 3 or 4 times what the deductible is before I would go to insurance, because it's going to impact all of the insurance on all of my properties for 5 years, and no one else will insure me. And then once I had 3 or 4 duplexes, I did it at 4. Like I said, you can probably do it at 3. I got the umbrella policy, which basically it doesn't kick in until you have a problem that exceeds the insurance of the vehicle or the property that you had the suit attached to. Then it kicks into the umbrella policy. And that I would base on the size of your portfolio. So if you'd want umbrella policy early, I'd probably do $1 million coverage until you have 3 or 4 properties. Then I'd raise it to 2 million. And if you have 10 plus, like the lumberjack landlord or Zuber that have this money, they should have a $10 million umbrella policy. They're not that much. They don't cost as much as the numbers make it sound like they would. Derek, in my chat room. Howdy, Derek. Do you have friends that want to invest with you after they see your success? And if so, how do you gracefully handle the situation? I tell them I don't do partnerships. Luckily, I haven't ever been able to pull off a marriage partnership, so I'm obviously not partnership material. But partnerships for me, while it might be a way to start your investing, doesn't seem like a way to have financial freedom. You're tied to someone else's decisions. That's how I would tell. I would say I share my information freely, and I will suggest, although I have tried to partner with somebody when it made sense. We were going to buy a mobile home park together, and it was non-conforming, and a couple of other things came up, so we backed out of the deal. So it's not that I'm opposed to ever having partnerships. Nobody's approached me with the right deal to be a partner with. And during growth phase, I was probably more likely to do that, like looking at the mobile home park. And now I don't know that I would want my finances tied to anybody else like that. Yeah, it depends on what your goals are, what their goals are, if they align. if you're going to do a partnership, that's one of the times an LLC makes sense because their purpose is to protect you from somebody else's mistakes. There is no asset protection from an LLC if you don't have partners, but if you do, that's what they're there for. And get everything in writing now while everybody gets along. It's not going to be easy to put something in writing later when there's a disagreement. So have an uninterested third-party attorney that doesn't work for you or them. Probably look at the contracts to make sure it's fair. It never hurts to have an attorney look at it from yours that has a fiduciary responsibility to look out for your best interests, but making sure it's fair is the best way to go because it's going to be the easiest to argue in court. An unfair contract in court, well, you can't stick to the letter of it. Judges can change things. Good question. Beach Builder. Dion, do you ever send gift cards to your tenants for the holidays? I do not. The closest would be April of 2020 when the pandemic hit and the world shut down. I contacted tenants and said, hey, I understand everybody's nervous. Let's take $200 off of next month's rent to just help everybody out. Half of my tenants said, we're working. No, thanks. We're fine. The other half said, fine, took it. One tenant the next month asked if I was going to do it again. And I was like, everybody's working. No. No, the best thing I think I do for tenants is first to use the third type of asset protection that I use is I fix things. I will actually do inspections, do walkthroughs, have handyman check things, banisters, anything that's safety, the steps, decks that can be a safety issue are repaired immediately. If a tenant calls with a concern, they understand the 3 words that make it a phone call, not a text or an email. And sometimes I'm the second phone call after 911. But those kind of issues get fixed quickly. And I keep my rents below area average. I think that's the thing. And using the binder strategy, the tenants are actually aware of that. I've not done gift certificates because you could get in trouble for discrimination. What if somebody doesn't celebrate the holiday that you do? And you don't do a gift certificate with them, but you do with your tenants who do. And then you have to evict the tenant who doesn't have that holiday that you do. And somehow they're aware because small multifamily, people talk. You have proven that you give things to somebody that you are not evicting and do not give something to somebody you are evicting. There's a case there. So I haven't done any of that yet. I don't think I ever will. That was a good question too. Thank you. Laura. It is frustrating when the tenants smoke inside the unit. Yes, it is. I witnessed my tenant and friend smoking inside. My AC guy needed to do a deep cleaning due to the buildup of nicotine on a 1-year-old AC. Yep, so that might be considered proof for an eviction, but is it worth it? It's going to cost you just as much when they move out as it does now, except if your AC keeps having issues. That might be a not renewal of lease situation. I agree. Cinda, howdy. You can pivot from VA or FHA to conventional, but not from conventional to VA or FHA. The appraisals for FHA and VA have government requirements that conventional appraisers don't have. So you're right. I agree. It's you can pivot away from that. The cool thing with the VA is the limit went away. And you can have more than one now. So like there's different rules and it changes all the time. So you kind of have to stay on top of it. And your lenders generally know how to do that, but not all lenders do. And FHA is a pain all the way around. So I agree. And they do have requirements that whether they're real or not, because all it really is it has to be kind of live-in. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be live-in safe. For FHA, a lot of sellers won't take it because they think there's more hoops to jump through to get it accepted. And it could be something as simple as having straps on your water heater, $100, $200 fix that can delay a closing. Tom, thanks, Cindy. Yes, thank you, Cindy. That was good. No Mondays, always Saturday. Howdy. That's a great name. I wonder where you came up with that. It sounds original. I love it. Perfect. 000. Dion wants everyone he knows to be financially free. Not all heroes wear capes, kids. I can't express it enough and what a life-changing event it is. And I don't even think I realized it until the last couple of months. I think it was theoretical in the first few years. It was after the income snowball, it was a thing. I knew it was a thing. But actually walking away from a job I liked with golden handcuffs in the millions and not caring, it's better than winning the lottery. Saley, howdy. I was going to put an offer on an old listing, 230,000 plus 10,000 seller concessions, but listing agents said they already have an offer for 240. Should I still give my offer? Absolutely. I've seen properties sit on the market and then you make your offer and magically that day they have 2 or 3 other offers. So they look for your best and final. So I'm the kind of jerk that usually sends back the best and final $5,000 less. I wouldn't do that. That was hyperbole. I would send back, that is my best and final. You have it. If it works, great. If not, I'm looking up for something else. It's a negotiation tactic to try to get a better deal, better offer out of you. Now, if it's been on the market less than a couple of days, that might be real, and you don't have the time span to think, okay, that price that they're asking for isn't selling, so this is the number that makes sense to me. So yes, there's a chronology to that. I would still give your offer, and I would actually maybe make it less. Ask for 15,000 in concessions, or tell them you want them to buy down the rate, and then you just say, look, congratulations, go with your other offer. If it's better, I'm happy for you. If not, my offer is in second position, meaning I'm still here with this offer if that falls through. Because it might fall through and it might not exist. That's a good one, because I've been in that situation, like I want to say 3 or 4 times. Literally, oh yeah, we've just got an offer at the same time. Antonio, howdy. Antonio Barajas. It almost sounds like, yeah. Howdy, Dion. Have you ever paid capital gains on rental, and what are good ways to avoid them? No, and I don't know that I would avoid them. So I've never sold. I'll be completely transparent. My goal is to never sell a property. But if you pay capital gains on the sale of an asset, if I was going to sell, it would be to 1031 into a like type of asset. So I'd be buying more properties, either a couple or one that was worth more than the property that you sold. That's one of the requirements. You'd hire a 1031 company to do the process for you. There's a lot of there's timeline to it. You have to identify the property you're going to buy within 45 days. You have to close within, like, there's a chronology you need to Google and know when you go to do it. There's a reverse 1031 where you sell a property and then you can identify the property that you're going to 1031 into. You can buy a property and then sell a property that you use those gains to on the 1031. But buying the property or selling the other property, one of those starts the timeline, and most people I've talked to have messed that up and ended up having to go and just pay the gains. Zuber has paid the gains on a couple of flips that he's done recently. He did 56 flips in the last couple of years. Ways to avoid capital gains tax. The 1031 is one. You have the stepped up tax system, which resets depreciation when your offspring inherit, or when your inheritors inherit your properties, and that amount can change. Currently it's 5 million, but it's been up and down in my life from there. Trying to think of other ways to avoid capital gains. When you go to sell, seller financing is a great option as a seller, because you're going to get paid monthly installments. So you're going to make so much money in a year, which is going to keep you in a lower tax bracket on that income, depending on what else you have going on, instead of getting it all at once. You also own a note. So if you ever needed the money all at once, you could sell the note somewhat of a discount as to what it's actually worth. You're gaining interest instead of the bank. You have consistent payments without dealing with tenants, termites, and toilets. And like I said, you own the note, so you can sell it. You can seller financing is a good way to get around capital gains, and the 1031 exchange. And I might be struggling a little. I give you 2 options, but the reason I'm not coming up with a third or a fourth is because, like I've said a few times, my goal with my properties is to do better than I did with my marriages. Until death do we actually part. I don't want to ever sell a cash flowing asset to reach financial freedom. If you recycle capital by selling to 1031 or doing a cash out refinance or taking out a home equity line of credit to buy properties, you are going to scale faster. You're going to have a portfolio closer to Michael Zuber's and Matt the Lumberjack Landlord's size of portfolio. Not my goal. So I haven't done any of that. Rich, thanks, Dion. Smash the like button. Thank you. I appreciate that. Every time you hit the like button, an angel gets its wings. Antonio, how do you get a great CPA and evaluate him as someone who knows what he's doing? I recommend getting a CPA as soon as you have a rental. It's not as simple as you think. There's not just a 27.5-year depreciation schedule that you need to put your property on. Some things depreciate 5 years, some things 15, some things the whole length. So cost segregation can impact it. Because there's you can use depreciation. Now there's been a depreciation bonus depreciation for the last few years. Like there's scheduled, amortized bonuses, like all these types of depreciation. I don't even want to know what they do. I just know that the CPA knows the best way to save money. Finding out if they work in your industry. So a tax pro doesn't mean a real estate tax pro. Doesn't mean, a early retirement tax pro, especially if their thing is, you need to avoid taxes by putting everything in retirement accounts, which doesn't do you any good if you want to retire before 59 and a half. See the video on my channel on why retirement accounts suck. Recommendations is a good strong suit. Matt, the lumberjack landlord, had a good recommendation, and I might butcher this because I got memory issues. He says get an EA instead of just a CPA. And that is somebody, EA means something, but they have to be tested every year on the new changes to the tax laws. So they're more current. I guess that's the way I've heard him explain it. And my CPA it's the one weird thing with this business. So if you have a handyman, or if you have a real estate agent, or you have a lender, or you have a contractor, or you have a property manager, instead of giving them gifts at any point in time, the best thing that you can do for them, in my opinion, this is what I do, is I give them referrals. If you live around me and you need a good lender or an agent or a contractor, I've got people to send you to, right? I've sent dozens of people, if not more, to them. Talked to my CPA one time and he says, nope, no referrals. We don't need any more business. And I'm like, well, business runs on not growing new customers, but they do. So it might be not that easy. I would also check out the BiggerPockets forums, looking for good CPAs, get recommendations. And my CPA is not in my state. I don't think it's really state specific unless you live in a really tricky state, maybe New York, California. You might want a local CPA to know more about the rules and laws there. But Washington State, we don't have an income tax, so it's a little easier. And now there's like a 7% capital gains tax. So I don't know how hard it is to keep up with that kind of stuff, but I'm not a CPA. I love having one though. And also when you do it, when you hire the CPA to do your taxes, ask them if they include audit protection or if it's an additional charge. Some of them offer audit protection, but don't tell you. It's a thing that they have, but they probably don't want to, because then you have to emergency pay for it later, right? Instead of paying the like $140 or whatever to have audit protection for that year. I always pay for the audit protection on mine. Antonio, Dion, you are golden. Thanks for the info. When I grow up, I want to retire early, just like you, but not today. Need to get a sound effects button. Laura, when a new tenant moves in, I have a kitchen basket with liquid soap, etc., and a bathroom basket that includes toilet paper. I was only thanks for the toilet paper. Nice. Yeah, no, sometimes it makes sense. I think that really makes sense if you're doing short-term rentals where there's going to be almost like a Yelp review on Vrbo or Airbnb where everyone else is going to look at your rating. You do things like that, it stands out. I've never had a tenant track down a prior tenant and ask what it was like to rent from me. So not so much of an ROI on long-term tenants, but on short-term tenants, I think there could be benefit. Tony, howdy. How are you? I am excited about November 28th. Tony knows why. Howdy. Sometimes these heroes wear pirate outfits celebrating our beloved and lustrous flying spaghetti monster. Very true. Just did a wedding, and then after the wedding, I was gifted this because it will go good with my outfit. Regalia. Costume. That's ridiculous. Regalia. If you haven't Googled flying spaghetti monster, it's a rabbit hole. Be careful. Beach builder, Dion. Now that you don't have a W-2, have you ever calculated how much you make an hour now being financially independent with your rental properties? I absolutely have, and I have a video on my channel, and I don't remember the name of it. But at the time, it's gone up since then. Off the binder strategy. Holy crap. At the time, it was $19 an hour, 24 hours a day, $80 an hour if you factored in a 40-hour work week. And I did this about a month before retiring, and I did it on the whiteboard at work. And I remember looking at the thing, looking at the camera, going, this is what I make off my rentals, because this much every month, this much every hour, this is how many hours are on a month, this is 2,080 hours in a year, so not even factoring overtime. And I was looking at it going, why the F am I working? Like in my head. I didn't say that out loud because I hadn't decided to retire yet. But I was looking at that money going, have I ever had a job where I made $80 an hour? Well, I have one now for only going 40 hours a week. And I'm working. Like, what's the point of this? I liked that job, but it might have been in that moment that the little switch said, hey, Goober, there's a whole life. And I think the thought process was this. When you're 60, talking to myself, so Dion, when you're 60, do you want to remember your 50s, which is where I'm at now, as the decade you continue to grow someone else's company, or the decade you didn't, and you still made more money? I'm making more money this year off of my rentals than I even made at that job in my highest year. So my best job, I will make more than that off rentals this year. And that's why I retired. So at the time, that would have been what? June, $19 an hour, 24 hours a day. So the military do this and they earn something like, it's like $1.80 an hour to be in the military and put your life at risk. And I was making $19 an hour, sleeping, driving, when I'm out eating every day, no matter what. Why was I working? I never said I was bright. Squint. Here we go. John, Texas. Howdy. When you purchase a duplex and inherit the tenants, what do you do to qualify them? Also, do you require the seller to prove the tenants have paid the last 6 months rent, months or so? So good couple of questions in there. Let me see if I can get this. And then we will probably be wrapping up here in a few minutes. John, Texas, let me see. You purchase a duplex and you inherit tenants. So I often say inherited tenants, but some people get offended by that because I'm not always in real estate groups. I'll be in finance groups, and then 90% of that is stocks, and they hate landlords. So when you say, oh, I have an inherited tenant property thing, oh, you inherit tenants, like you own them. No. Existing tenants in a property that you purchase, you didn't get to vet them, you didn't get to run their credit score, you didn't get to do all kinds of things to find out if you'd even let them move in. You are bound by the existing lease. So however much time is remaining on it, and a longer lease, you really can't make any changes in that amount of time. On a month-to-month lease, you have to know your local laws on when you can choose to not renew, what reasons you can use to not renew. All that stuff applies. So here's how I vet the tenants when they're in place. For 2 months, I don't use the binder strategy. I do not actually have the binder strategy here. I don't take this to them and do a strategy to get them to ask me to raise the rent for at least 2 months, because I want to test for 3 things. Because what are you vetting for when you screen a tenant? You are checking their credit to see if they pay on time. You're checking their income to think, could they pay on time with the amount of money that they make? You are checking criminal background, depending on your area, if you're allowed to see if they fit in with your tenants or if you would want to take the risk on it. Quick golden nugget: if you're in an area where you're not allowed to check the criminal background of a person and you don't want certain types of tenants, you can always buy around a school. That keeps that without having to break any legal barriers. Boundaries? Barriers. Words are hard. Channeling Kronk. So for those 2 months, I'm making sure they do what those things would tell me. I don't really need to know their income. I don't need to know their credit score. I need to know what would a good income and a good credit score mean. They're going to pay on time. For those 2 months, do they? So before I use the binder strategy on month-to-month tenants to commit to another 1 or 2 years, I wait those 2 months to see 3 things. Do they pay on time? Do they pay the full amount? How many issues pop up with it? Second, do I get called for super trivial things? Third, do I get called for noise complaints? Are they noisy tenants that I'm going to have issues with? And you can generally tell that in about 2 months. So that's how I vet the tenants. So far, I've renewed. I've done the binder strategy on all of them. If I had one, I had to educate a little bit on what it's like to be a tenant. But the other part of your question is I do ask for proof of rental deposits for 3 months. So usually it's just an image of a bank statement or a canceled check or a deposited check or whatever, saying this, or the screenshot of their Venmo or whatever way they were accepting rents. There have been times where I was buying a property where there were no leases in place and they had no proof of rents. And I just calculated, okay, an eviction is probably going to take me 6 months to find a valid reason if they stop paying. So worst case scenario, and the eviction my friend went through took 14 days. So I'm planning for 6 months. 6 months with no rent and the cost of an eviction. This is what I'm adding to the cost to acquire for this property. Would it still make sense? So even without leases and without knowing if the tenants are paying rent, is it worth purchasing or not? You can run your numbers that way. And that's how I did that. Still purchased the property and had no issues. So hopefully it goes that well for you as well. Oh, we finally got a 5-minute porn subscriber. John, Texas. Oh, that was it. Laura. And I don't have Matt, the lumberjack landlord, with me tonight to be my little helper. And how do you, where's the 3 dots here? There they are. Report. Unless you want the porn people here, then, I don't want to take away something if you needed it. Laura, Dion, I explained and forwarded your binder method to a friend that owns free and clear 5 properties and not increased rent in 5 years because she feels bad last Sunday. My friend called me today to tell me that your binder method encouraged her to increase $200 on each of the rentals. Her tenants were fine with it. Thank you for, she got $1,000 a month raise. That is awesome. That is the purpose of it. And if she kind of used the strategy where she shared what rents are in the area, tenants are happy. Like, nobody likes their rent to go up, but it's like, wow, that's only 200 and it could have been 6. And then you took back a message to make me lose sleep and wonder forever what Laura meant or said. Oliver. How do you qualify tenants? How much do you accept payment of rent? How do you accept payment of rent? Sorry. So how do I qualify tenants? Most landlords want a multiplier of the income, 2.5 times the rent, 3 times the rent, whatever their metric is. I have never looked at, asked, or cared how much somebody made. I do ask if they have a job so that I can verify it, because it's a way for me to tell if they're being honest. Don't verify employment by the information they give you. Get the name of the company, Google the company another way, ask for HR, not a specific name, get HR, verify their employment. So I've done that several times. Always, so far, that person actually worked there. Very easy to fake employment. You can fake pay stubs. You can have somebody else answer the phone. Thank you for calling Initech, just a moment. You can do all of that very easily. Hard to fake a company that you find online faking an HR personnel telling you that they work there or they don't work there. Don't care how much they make. I know people making 6 figures late on every bill. And if you go off of income, you often reduce your pool of tenants, of good quality tenants, because you eliminate bartenders, cosmetologists, waiters, people who make their money mostly through tips, right? So I try not to do that. So there's only 2 things I look at when it comes to qualifying a tenant. One, having worked in law enforcement, I do not care about criminal background. People need to get off of that. I don't think I've ever met somebody in my entire life who hasn't committed a felony. Some people got caught. So I don't look at backgrounds. If I don't have very many tenants with kids, but I would look at what do you call it? Sexual, what do they call it? Registered offenders. Then I would, if I had young tenants in there, but I have most of my tenants. I think I have two tenants who have kids. One's a single family house, so I don't have to worry about the neighbors there or the other side of it. So I don't look at criminal background. I do look at credit score. Credit score is like it's almost the only metric I really care about. The other metric I have 2. The other one I care about because it's worked out well. But credit score, and I have a minimum of 700. I have Section 8 tenants with an 831 credit score. So somebody who's worked hard to get their credit score above 700 is going to protect it. So in the 600s, you can buy a house. I've had people say, well, why would somebody with a 700 rent your place? I don't know, but there's 30 plus applicants every time a place comes open. Not everybody wants to own a house, and not everybody with a great credit score has very high income. Sometimes they're making $30,000, $35,000 a year, but they have 800 credit scores because they know how to do this. Like my Section 8 tenants. Section 8 is not low income. Section 8 is fixed income. So it's credit score And your area may be different. Your area may be like, if you're investing in Gary, Indiana, Millennial Mike will say this better than I will. He will say, in that area, the houses are so affordable that if you have a credit score above 600, you buy. So he'll do, I think, 580 or 620 or whatever his criteria is. It's less than mine. Mine is 700 because I'm in an area where houses are very expensive and you have to make a lot to buy here. Like, I had to rent my house out for 2 years to qualify with rental income to use my debt to income ratio to buy the duplex that I moved into first. It's a hard market to get into. Calling me again. Unless they're I should have answered that. It's my nephew who was coming back from Hawaii, and I think I'm going to pick him up at the airport. Did he text me? No. Okay, he would text me if he needed to pick that up. Sorry. Squirrel. So credit score is what matters. And the next thing that matters to me is no evictions ever. If somebody had an eviction in 1970, they know that they can work the system to get several months free out of a landlord and probably never have to pay the money back. I don't want that person in my property. I do have people in my properties who have had evictions, and I have no problems with them. They were in the properties when I acquired them, so they were existing tenants. So maybe it's a metric you don't even need, but I won't put somebody in if I know that in advance. And so I use apartments.com. My last one, I used Hemlane. And if you want to use Hemlane, and if you put Dion in it, you get a discount on your first year. To do it, they put it on 30 platforms. To do, the applicant pays Hemlane, and before that it was apartments.com, like $39 or $45 or whatever the application fee is for the platform that they're on. That runs the credit, checks for evictions, and in some states it'll do a criminal background check. So that's how I screen tenants. And how do I collect rent? I have a video on my channel. 3 things to consider when you collect rent. I want to collect rent as long as it does these 3 things. First, make it easy on the tenant. So I want to provide options that tech-savvy tenants can do and people with flip phones can do. Second, I want to make sure it leaves at least an electronic paper trail, a way to prove rental payment or lack of in the future. And third, I want it to save me a trip to the bank. I don't want to have to go out and do stuff because I'm super lazy. That financial freedom is not about time commitment. It's about time freedom, right? So those are the 3 things I look at. I accept rent. I have a tenant who pays with a check. I go there once a year. She writes out 12 checks for the year, and then I deposit them with an app on the 4th. Did I do that this month? Yes. Okay. What day is it? I don't know. It's not Monday. No Mondays. Always Saturdays, like the name said. So leaves a paper trail, makes it easy on the tenant, leaves a paper trail, saves a trip to the bank. I've had some people say, well, if you accept money through PayPal, they can take it back. So can they with a check or a Zelle payment for up to 14 business days. Learned that with the truck driving school. Somebody would graduate, pay with a check, and then 2 weeks later, they take their money back out of our account. Like magic. So I wanted to leave an electronic paper trail. I want to have a lease. I want to be able to pursue the money if I have to go to small claims court if I needed to. And then some other times people will say, well, don't take any electronic payments because if you're trying to evict somebody, they can make a partial payment, which is true. And if you take a partial payment, it can reset the timeline on your eviction. So if you get a partial payment through Zelle or through Apple Pay, Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, there's another one, Apple Pay. I just said that already. There's another one out there I'm missing. Several ways that my tenants pay. You create a holding account to hold the partial payment, and you keep proof that you have not accepted that into your functioning accounts. You want in an account that's being held that you can show, yes, they sent payment, here I'm holding it, I did not accept the partial payment, the eviction stays on its current timeline based on the recommendation of my attorney in my area. Check with your local laws if that's the case. I hope that helps. That's the 2-part question there. Oliver, now that you've been to Beth's vacation rental, would consider buying vacation home rentals in Washington State? Maybe. It was very hands-off for her. So it would depend on the deal. It would depend on the area. I'd really have to crunch numbers in two formats, in and out of season, what it's going to do. So consider it, yes. On my to-do list, no. But also neither is really buying. I'm probably going to buy it because money keeps piling up. And I don't know if I want to go out and just buy like a $500,000 RV and drive it around, because the money's got to go somewhere. So I'm probably going to buy more property, but I'm not really hunting. The vacation rental, I love the way that Beth did it because it's near Lake Cleellum and she can stay in the place she calls the cabin. It's a cabin that sleeps 9 people. It's got all the amenities. It's got like a gaming room. It's got air hockey, foosball, basketball thing, like all these. It's got a hot tub. It's got all the things I would want in a place where I could then take advantage of it, right? Or I could just go stay in a place like that with the cash flow from rentals. But that's me mentally overthinking it because it's very hands-off for her. She has an agency that runs that vacation rental. So the right deal, if it was presented, because I'm not hunting for it, it would have to literally come to me. I'm not hunting for it. Yes, I would consider it. Laura, Dion, continue. Okay, yep. I read that already. Thank you. That was awesome. Larry, howdy, Larry. The only thing missing from your pirate outfit was a parrot on your shoulder. Could be how I lost the eye. Have you ever walked prospect tenant to their car and smell if their cigar smoke? Can't say anything to. I've done that with employees who are applying for a position. I haven't done it with tenants. I do generally like, so let me give a caveat and I will be wrapping up here pretty soon. I'll probably get to whatever is in place now until we get to this comment. I've worked in law enforcement. I've been in the Marines. I don't go anywhere unarmed. Hell, I'm armed now, sitting at my desk. And there's 9 lethal weapons laying around me too. Always mix lethal weapons and alcohol. I mean, water when you can. That's strong water. I like to meet tenants at their house to sign a lease before they move in. So where are they currently renting? I'm comfortable going by myself. You might not be. And you might want to meet in a public place where, yes, checking out their car. And employers will do this too. They're not looking for just cigarette smell. They're looking for, is there damage that's not been repaired that points to how much you maintain your own personal stuff? If you don't respect your stuff, why are you going to respect the companies? Is your windshield unsafe? Do you have car seats if they're looking to illegally judge you for having or not having kids? Because I'll be transparent. I liked hiring single parents. Single parents don't quit. They're the sole source of income. They're the most stable employee to have. Long-term employee. They'll need days off for the kid, but you can live with that. So that's discrimination. Like literally a discrimination against married people who don't have kids, who are trying for the job. Employers do that. And that's information me using from lots of feedback from running a nonprofit with over 1,200 employers who hire from us, who behind closed doors say, these are the things we're actually looking for. So we don't waste their time with people they wouldn't hire. Lots of illegal stuff happens that you just have to try to get around. But yes, looking at their car can tell you something. And I think I have a lot of tenants who do smoke, who don't smoke in the house. So while that is a thing and a concern, I don't know that I would say no to a smoker being a tenant. Thank you, Don, for reporting them. I appreciate it. North Colorado, Don, how are you? Beach Builders, Tom, at least they can't send individual links to us. Yes, I do have it. So if you've ever tried to link something in the chat, I'm sorry, you can't link a chat if it has a link in it. You can't put a link into a chat because it used to stop that kind of stuff from happening. And Laura, you showed her how to find area average rent. Perfect. That is the whole point. We're not trying to raise rents beyond what we should get. We're not even really going to average rents most time. But it's explaining to the tenant what actually happens to the rents around them. Tom, felons need a place to live also. Absolutely. And like I said, I don't think I've met too many people who haven't committed a felony, but some of us got caught. And I can honestly say, I have never been arrested in the United States. Delta Uniform Tango Charlie Hotel Echo Sierra Sierra. Howdy. Duchess? Duchess. Okay, took me a second. Because they got 2 different phonetics. You've got military and law enforcement. And it sucks when you're prior military and you work in law enforcement because every time your adrenaline goes up, you start using military and you hear everybody laughing on their mics. They're listening and paying attention, but they can tell that your adrenaline's up and you're going back to original training. Zelle is like a bank wire in my experience. Have not heard of a single Zelle transaction reversed, even when discovered within minutes of fraudulent activity discovered. So it depends on the banking institution. Small banks can pull Zells back. It has happened to the truck driving school. It has a limit of so many business days, and it's not like a wire transfer. It's something else. They called it. And I don't remember what the term was. Then the other problem with Zelle that people usually bring up is it's the hardest way to stop a partial payment from coming in, because it actually goes into your account. So, but I accept all of them. So I'm not saying any one of them is not a good idea. Beach Builder. Howdy. Dion, would you invest in Fundrise or Here Vacations? I don't want to pool my money with anybody else's. I think most of the syndications or anything like Fundrise that I've seen is people guessing what's going to happen with the market instead of having a plan for up market, down market, up interest rates, down interest rates, inflation, deflation, like all of the things that they're not planning for. They're planning for, if everything goes this way, here's how much money you're going to make, and not planning for all of the other exits that you might need. So I haven't thought of investing in those. No. And that puts us at 2 hours and 25 minutes. I want to thank everybody for coming and hanging out. We have 63 people on, 61 likes. People have cycled through, so I appreciate each like. Thank you all for the super chats tonight. They were much appreciated. Derek, make sure I don't miss any. I probably will. Surf Marco, 000. Derek, again, Derek, thank you very much for that. Tom. And if anybody knows Jonathan Elmore, I'll put a link in the chat on the video with Jay Scott and in this one saying that Jonathan was the one who won the Audible version of Real Estate by the Numbers by Jay Scott and David Meyer. And I'm going to read this and then we'll be wrapping up. Todd, howdy. Scott, howdy. But Todd says, I'm a big fan. Thank you. Thank you very much. I am in the process of buying land to build a fourplex that will have enough solar panels to be net zero energy throughout the year. I am planning to include utilities in the rent as a differentiator in my market, and everyone is calling me crazy. Can you weigh the pros and cons of including utilities in your rent? Some local municipalities charge you for not using utilities. So make sure that you're not in a place that will back charge you for not connecting or not using utilities. It might be a net zero. There are some who, if you overproduce, they can pay you for it, but most of them are charging you for not being on their utilities. So I would check that first to make sure you're not going to get a bill in the future you weren't expecting. How are you financing them? Are you considering the cost of financing the panels and that cost in your build into your return? So like there's a few things to look at there. Depending on where you live, I know that here in Washington State, most of the people I know that have solar on their roof have roof issues because we have like 200 something days of rain here. So it could depend on where you're at. And also we don't have as much light, sun to actually impact solar to produce enough energy here for it to be a net zero. Okay, so the net metering has a net month-based fee. So as long as you're including that and you know what those fees are going to be and that they could change. One of the reasons why, and I've talked about this a few times, I prefer well and septic over city and sewer water, city water and sewer, is because like the lumberjack landlord found, they can triple their rates like they did in the last couple of years, and there's nothing you can do about it. Solar is included in construction price. And if you're in some areas, construction is requiring, like Zuber just found out he's not doing an ADU because to do it in California, there was an additional $16,000 fee to add solar to his ADU, and it's a requirement to build it, which killed his return. So you're in Southern California, which is where Zuber is. He's in mid-California. That's a thing. Awesome. I want to thank you all very much. And Todd, thank you for bringing that. That was, I hope my answer at least kind of helped a little bit on how I think about it, but I'm in Washington where solar isn't as important. If it makes sense to you and it's what you're wanting to do and you feel better about it too, like you're not investing off of emotion, but if it makes you feel better knowing that's there and you think it's a viable strategy, if somebody calls you crazy, tell them to explain why. maybe they're thinking or seeing something that I don't know and haven't thought of, and you haven't thought of too. So I hope you guys all have a week full of awesome. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.